All right. Good evening and welcome to the June 26th joint meeting between the City of Newberry and Alachua County. I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. We'll start off with a reading of the agenda. Then we will approve the agenda, then the county will approve the agenda. I would like to make one note correction under the list of commissioners. I believe Lee Pinkinson is the vice chair at this point in time. Just for the record, we'll have that in. So then we'll start with the invocation after the approval of the agenda, Pledge of Allegiance. Then we will welcome everyone. Then we'll have discussion items of Champions Park of Newberry update. I would like to move item D, the transportation discussion, up to B. I know a lot of folks in the audience here tonight are here for that, so we'll try to go ahead and get that done. So then C will become the fire service discussion. Then we'll have the Community Redevelopment Agency update. And then we will have the Alachua County's proposed stormwater manual update. We'll move on to commission general and informal discussion, followed by citizens' comments, and then we will adjourn. Do I have approval of the motion as read? I have a first by Commissioner Martin and a second by Commissioner Coleman. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the hospitality. We too will now adopt the agenda, and if we could just get a motion with those changes. Got a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Is there any public discussion to the motion? Seeing none, back to the board. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion is unanimous.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Commissioners, when you're speaking, if you'll push the button, turn green. When you're not speaking, if you'll turn it off, that'll prevent feedback.
Thank you. And just in case you just came in, I just want to let you know Commissioner Glanzer is running just a few minutes behind. Now, if we'd have Reverend Hampton. Is Reverend Hampton in the audience to give the invocation? No, he's not. Wasn't able to make it. He is a little under the weather. Lion Jack, could I impose upon you to give us an invocation? Or would you like to give the invocation, sir? Okay. All right. Lion Jack, thank you, sir. If we could all rise and then stay rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Lion Jack.
Our gracious and merciful Heavenly Father, we praise you for being in our midst, that we have come together to conduct business for the city, to serve our community, and we ask for your guidance that we do the right things. Guide us to our behavior is according to your will, and we witness to the faith and glorify you in our daily walk. Certainly, Father, the people who are responsible for the well-being of our community, we ask that you give them the Holy Spirit to show them the way, the truth, and the life. And all of this I ask in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, your Son and our Savior. Amen. Amen. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again, Lion Jack. The Lions Club motto is when they see a need, they fill a need, and he certainly proved that tonight. Okay. So, once again, thank you everybody for coming. Everybody is tuned in on YouTube, watching on Channel 97, everybody who's here in the audience. And would we like to jump right into our agenda items? Mr. New, going to lead us in our Champions Park update.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item tonight is item A, Champions Park of Newberry update. Our Recreation Director, Brad Carman, would ordinarily lead the discussion. He's out of town this week, and so we're going to introduce Jolene Cacciatore-Miller with the Gainesville Sports Commission. She has a presentation. If there's any questions, please feel free afterwards.
Welcome, Jolene. It's good to see you again. Got any more awards for us tonight, or tell us about the awards?
Same one. Telling you about it a little bit more. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, County Commissioners and City Commissioners, for having me again, and thank you, Mike. They wanted me to come in and just discuss the awards that we won at our Florida Sports Foundation Summit, and then talk about our economic impact numbers from Champions Park recently. and also talk about the improvements and show you a couple of photos if you haven't been to the park in a little bit, a lot has changed, a lot of positive change, which is great. So the first slide is from the Florida Sports Foundation. For those that you don't know, the Florida Sports Foundation is the sports industry developed division of Enterprise Florida. They assist Florida's community with securing, hosting, and retaining sporting events and sports-related business that generate significant economic impact and sports tourism for the state of Florida through the Foundation's grant programs, initiatives, and industry partner service recognition and development. Last year, we did apply for a couple of the state grants for some of the events at Champions Park, and we're funded through that. This past May, recently the Florida Sports Foundation, they host an annual summit which brings all the Florida sports commissions together. So there's 29 sports commissions in the state right now. And during the summit, the foundation presents awards recognizing the different communities and sports commissions for their outstanding efforts in sports tourism in the state of Florida. So the good news that I bring is this year, out of the 6 awards, the Gainesville Sports Commission was presented and won 2 of the awards. You can see them highlighted in blue. We won the Mid-Market Event of the Year, which is the Easton Foundation's Gator Cup Archery Classic, and of course Newberry. And we also won the Small Market Venue of the Year, which was Champions Park in Newberry with Alachua County and the Gainesville Sports Commission. So you can see out of the 6, we won 2, so we're really proud to bring that back home for us. I'll like to show you now, if they can quickly switch over the video, the awards video. And there's no sound. It would be telling you about the impact numbers that I'm going to go through anyway, so if we can't get sound.
We love the images.
Right.
You can share the video with us. We'll make sure we put it up on our website,
Right.
social media. I think this is already on our website.
Yes, it should be up, and then we did a
State-of-the-art fields built with the player, parents, and family in mind, ensuring each and every person has the baseball or softball experience of their dreams. While the park is located a short ride west of Gainesville to Newberry, Champions Park hosted over 15 major events in 2016. The Gainesville Sports Commission funded 11 of those events, and for every dollar in grant funds awarded to the park, $32 was created for residents and businesses in Alachua County. The 11 Gainesville Sports Commission funded events resulted in 21,159 total attendees, including 17,129 from out of area, that created 6,239 hotel room nights, for an impact of over $690,000. Those attending Champions Park played or watched games on 16 state-of-the-art fields built with the player, parents, and family in mind, ensuring each and every person has the baseball or softball experience of their dreams.
And that was showed during our Florida Sports Foundation Summit, and there was about 50 actual event owners that they brought in too. So with that, we were actually with the Fast Pitch Coaches Association, and they came up and asked for Mike Spina's contact information after the video. So we're really excited about that, and we've been showcasing it. We did do an award ceremony with the City of Newberry as well during their city commission. So we're really proud of it and the continued partnership we have. So now I'll just go. They wanted to talk about a couple of the fiscal year numbers, impact numbers from last year. I will have the new fiscal year numbers in October for this year, but we can just go over the fiscal year quarter 1 and show you kind of the impact numbers that have brought in through the October-December fiscal year, quarter 1. It is during fall, so as we all know, the city and county get pretty packed for Gator football games. So luckily, during some of the away games, we were able to place a USSSA Fall National event, and it brought in a good amount of rooms, at around 700, with an estimated direct hotel impact number of 85,000. The biggest thing that we did like about this fall event, you could see 3,700 attendees, and the out-of-county attendees were over 3,100, which is a great number. So this year, again, I know Suncoast is trying to fit a game in during one of the away games, I believe November 11th and 12th. So hopefully we can continue using these events as fillers for the fall. Our busy time is Q2 and Q3, January and March. As you can see, we had 3 major national qualifiers. USA Elite Softball, which that was the first year that we've hosted. They did come back this year and are planning on hosting them in the fall, possibly summer for 2018. And only those 3 events almost brought in 3,000 room nights alone, with over an impact of 300,000. And then same thing, the out of attendees were around 7,000, and then the out of attendees were 5,600, which was great. For the final Q3 and 4, you can see I kind of put them together because our spring is our busy time. Towards July, August, it's a little tricky due to the weather. It's definitely hot here. So we are trying to bring back a couple summer events from last year, but these 7 events that we helped fund, he did have other events like we talked about, but these are our funded events, and the estimated room nights was 2,654, and then again 268,000 impact. And with that was the out-of-county attendees was 8,388, which was a good number for those 7 events, and these were just simple state and regional qualifiers, which is great. So after we put everything together, out of the 11 GSC funded events, the park did around 15 or 16 events, but these are the ones that we funded for their economic impact and out-of-county participants and attendees. We had over 6,000 room nights and the hotel impact of almost 700,000, which is a great number. The total attendees were 21,000, and the out-of-area attendees were at 17,000. The biggest numbers that I always like to talk about is the percentage. As you can see to the right, 81% of the total attendees were from outside the area out of those 11 events, which is great. And then for every $1 of bid pool or event grant that we used and gave to the park, 32 were created in direct hotel impact, which is great. And we always try to keep that number. This year hopefully higher. As you can see, the impact, this is pretty much the second greatest sports tourism direct impact number in the county. So the parks is on its way up and doing a great job with that. I know the past couple years since we did some site improvements, we've been rebranding and renovating the park. I know I've been changing out our photos, and we have a couple of photos to show you from the before and after. As you can see, this is the original park, how it was laid out. All the wooden walls, when you walked into the park, it was very closed in, no breeze, definitely hot. Spectators didn't enjoy it. They liked to be behind the home plate, watch their kids play. So that we needed to do an improvement on that. As well as you can see, this was inside the infield. The dugouts, the only way to get to the dugout was if you had to walk in on that side. I don't know if, oh, there's a light. Right here, and this was the only entrance you could get to the field. There was no entrance by the dugout, only that one, and it was very closed in. Again, very hot, being in the summertime. The below photo is just kind of an overview. You can see the walls. It's very closed off, and only letting the spectators really watch on the first and third baseline, which we wanted to make the park more spectator friendly, especially for the parents who are traveling from far distance and out of state. Here is the after. This is one of the first fields that the walls came down and they replaced with the chain link fence. I really like this photo right down below because you could see just how much that chain link really opened it compared to the other 2 fields that have not been replaced. It makes a huge difference, especially when you get out there. The other improvement they did at the top left, they did some shading, which helps a lot. They also cut a hole while they were taking down the fences. They cut a hole in the cement for a dugout entrance, so now they don't have to go onto the field. You do get some air and some breezeway, and we've had some really good feedbacks from the coaches of the changes. Here's another great photo with the wooden fence taken down. I mean, it's a beautiful shot there that parents can sit around. Here is a photo of behind home plate that the parents watch, and then this is just a little spectator shot. You can see they want to be right behind home plate to see their team and their kids hit. There's really no bleachers right now. All the spectators are bringing their folding chairs. They are used to it by now, so we haven't gotten too much feedback from that. After we make them aware, they don't mind bringing their chairs in, which is okay. We already talked about rebranding. They've done a great job. With putting up a welcome sign, showcasing the Champions Park brand, and Mike Spina has done a Facebook page that has been kept up to date, has a lot of great photos of all the teams that come by, and there's also a revamped website. So if you have not gone on, please go to Facebook and their website to see the different events. And then here's the last kind of overview. You can just see how much the fences have really just opened up the park and made it a championship feel, how it's supposed to be. And the breeze, you can definitely tell from that during some times. So I know the City of Newberry is still working on some improvements, and below the information that was provided for me from the City of Newberry and Parks and Recreation, they did recently purchase 16 portable baseball mounds, replacing the original mounds that were purchased when the park opened. That's just simple wear and tear of it, and with the elements. They are installing the batting cages, which is a great improvement. The cement is poured, and I know the batting cage poles are there. They will be replacing the water tank, and then they're needing to schedule a purchase of the fast pitch portable mounds. Fast pitch right now, we're not really engaging the directors and the event owners because of the turf. The softball players do drag their feet. That could hurt the turf, so that's why we're really pushing to get these fast pitch portable mounds soon. And once we get these improvements, we can re-engage with Babe Ruth softball and other baseball and different softball organizations, which is great. So we definitely want to bring Babe Ruth softball state championship back, which is usually in July, which is a great time. But we're talking about over 100 softball teams being on that one complex. So we think this is a great improvement for that. I know John Pritchard from Visit Gainesville is here too, and he's been working with the city. If you have any questions about that, I know they were talking about the amendments too, so if you have any questions. But all in all, thank you so much. I just wanted to show you the numbers, and we're really loving the positive movement of this. We're excited to see the numbers for this year too.
Okay, great presentation. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Pickens.
Just want to tell the city of Newberry, y'all took a chance, and it looks like it's after a little bit of time, it's coming to its fruition. And thank y'all very much for doing something because it really does help with tourism. So appreciate it.
And I would also like to say the same, and also thank Commissioner McGehee for sitting on the tourism board. That's a good improvement. We had this presentation there last month, and it's great to see the city of Newberry really shining statewide, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
My commissioner have any questions? Commissioner McGee?
Not a question, but I just wanted to thank you all on behalf of the city and on behalf of the park operator, Mike Spina, and Champions Park LLC. I know that these additions, it was kind of a big bump in the road as far as getting this park operational and actually making a little bit of money for the operator. I know that the improvements that you guys have allowed us to use part of the money that we saved on the bond refi have really helped, and I know I've talked to several of the parents that come out to these events, and they were here when we first opened, and it was just it was like an oven out there. But it's great to see that park actually kind of rising from the ashes and doing what you guys and the former commission wanted it to do. So just wanted to thank you all for helping us out with that.
Commissioner Glanzer?
I just want to say thank you for being patient with us. I remember some of you were back there way back when we brought this idea before you, and it was kind of crazy, but you believed in us, and it took a while, but thank you for, sticking in there with us.
Commissioner Martin?
Is there still a directive on the county commission's side for trying to get this bond paid off early? Is that still the feeling? And is there, so as a follow-up, is there a plan for set-asides for improvements moving forward once that bond is set off? Have you gotten that far?
Yeah, so I guess I'll speak. I don't believe there is. Right now, those 2 pennies have been committed to the next project, which is the Fairgrounds project, exclusively until that's done, so I don't believe there's any additional set-asides for this project. Commissioners? Yep.
Anyone else? Well, I'll add my gratitude to all of the entities that worked to make this happen. It was a long, hard road at some times, but we've got there. In my mind, in the Alachua County, obviously, University of Florida is always going to be the #1 tourist entity. So the real fight for everybody else is who gets to come in #2, and to have that #2 right here in Newberry at Champions Park, that's something. To have been part of this from the rocky parts to now that it was actually succeeding. I appreciate y'all's vision. I appreciate this commission's vision and the past commission's vision. I want to thank everybody involved, especially the operator, Mike Spina, because he's the one who's really went in there and turned this thing around. And hopefully, I don't think that we have any immediate needs in that park right now, but we'd like to think of that park as sort of our Disney-esque facility. We like to keep it top notch. So hopefully within the next 8 to 10 years, maybe we can open up that conversation and keep those bed nights coming in for the whole county. So anything else?
No.
Thank you so much for coming out and presenting to us. We appreciate it. Okay, Mr. New, I think we'll move to the transportation discussion. Now, I believe that both of our staffs have presentations for this item. Would we like to be good hosts and let the county staff do their presentation first?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and actually there's, I guess, a subpart A and a subpart B. County staff is just going to kind of share with all of us the status of gas tax and where that stands. I think the county commission is well versed on it, us not so much. And so the county has prepared a presentation for that, and then the second part will be roads and an interlocal agreement we have for maintaining roads. County staff has prepared a presentation, and so have our staff, and would let them go first, of course.
Okay, so we're going to begin with the gas tax.
Welcome, Mr. Gabarete. You have the floor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, City Commissioners and County Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here. A little warm, but it's a pleasure to be here. So I believe the gas tax presentation is up on the screen at this time. It's a very short presentation. It's just a little update to both commissions as to the local option gas tax status. So if we can go to, I guess, oh, look at that. That's how it works. All right. Okay, too fast? There we go. So just recently, probably about a month ago, the Board of County Commissioners, City of Gainesville, reached agreement on the 4th and 5th and 6th cent of the gas tax. That was the gas tax that was expiring at the end of this year. So now all the gas taxes are expiring December 31st of 2018. Part of that agreement, the smaller cities percentages actually increased slightly for those 4th, 5th, and 6th cents. And you cannot see this that well there, but just what basically the city of Newberry's gas tax for these 4th, 5th, and 6th cents went from 0.81% to 0.95% of the share. So the Board of County Commissioners and the City of Gainesville also decided to use a mediator to come to a final agreement, hopefully on all the 11 cents of gas tax. That includes the the first 3, the second 3, and the Elms Nickel, which is the last 5 cents. So I know the county and the city are in the process of determining who that mediator would be, and then that will hopefully get us to a full agreement on all the 11 cents of the gas tax. So that's really the update that I have until now, and I'm sure we can answer any question you might have.
So any questions, commissioners? Any comments, commissioners?
Anything on our
We've
side?
been through it extensively for many, many meetings.
We would,
The only thing I would say is that the mediation is part of both motions of the city and the county board, or that the mediation would occur prior to the end of this calendar year for planning purposes for next year. So you can, once I think we get through the adoption of our budget, adoption of the city's budget, then we'll be jumping right into that on the county side.
am I
And,
correct in saying this expires in 2018? Is that,
All the gas taxes expire December 31st, 2018 now.
okay. And so these negotiations are for the formula rolling
Correct.
over? All right.
Commissioner Hutchinson?
Yeah, I just want to point out for those who can't read, the portion that the county gets is 5.9 million. Portion that the city of Gainesville gets is looks like 9 million. So when people hear that we have a $500 million transportation deficit in Alachua County, at the current rate of the gas taxes, that would take 100 years to. Yeah, and the problem's getting worse. So, because people say, well, why don't you just fix it all with the gas taxes? Well, that shows you that the gas taxes are roughly 10% of the amount that we need to take care of the problem.
I think all that the city of Newberry would like the county to consider when it comes to the gas tax and the reformulation is the formula that you guys use, especially when it comes to small cities, obviously. When I look at the recent demographic information that was released, Newberry is the fastest growing city in the county. We've got more miles than Alachua. We've got more miles than High Springs. We have more people than High Springs, yet we have a smaller piece of the formula. So when it's time to, I think the formula that you guys are using might be out of date. So when it comes time to look at the formula again, if you would look at the more recent information, I would think that would help us. All right. Anything else on the gas tax? Any other?
Commissioner Barley?
Thank you, Commissioner. Are you able to tell us the basis for the formula that allocates the money among the municipalities in the county right now?
I cannot tell you the current formulation because that's been in the books for quite some time. But I can also tell you that it does not follow the miles of road maintains.
Well, 10 years ago or so when we were doing this, there was the two models we were working with, well, three, the state default formula and then the population-driven model and then the miles, length of road, number of road miles formula. And if memory serves, we kind of compromised between the population and the road mile figures. The city of Gainesville in particular wanted the population-driven model, of course. The county wanted the road mile-driven one. I think we met somewhere in the middle. So I don't know why, if you have the largest population in the number of road miles, well, you don't have the largest population of the smaller municipalities. I guess it would be second. But the greatest number of road miles, it should still work with that formula, so I don't understand why you would be shorted in the way you're describing.
I share your confusion there. So hopefully we can get that worked out because 10 years ago those numbers wouldn't have played out. The miles should have been the same, but now our population has surpassed High Springs. So that's why I just want to make sure it's on everyone's radar in 2018 when we re-evaluate this, that we don't use the numbers from a decade ago to make that formula.
Well, yeah, and I'll make a comment that the county is interested in, obviously, the road miles formula. The city is obviously interested in the population formula. Their interest is primarily expanding transit. Ours is primarily road resurfacing. So, one thing that, I'll be thinking about is adding, because I think most of the smaller cities have the same kind of interest in the county. So I'll be asking our staff to look at kind of the small cities and the county's unincorporated roads in comparison to what the city of Gainesville's needs are from a transit perspective, and we'll be negotiating on, at least I will be negotiating on that basis. So hopefully that's helpful. So thank you for those comments.
That is.
Anything else, Commissioners?
Anything on our side in light of that? Okay. Mr. New, is there a second part to the gas tax, or?
Once again, Commissioners, I believe the next presentation is the one for the road maintenance update. If we can get up, that's the cities. That's the one. There we go. Commissioners, what my staff and I did, we went back to the interlocals agreements dating all the way back to October of 1992. And the resolution there in that screen is cutting off some words at the end. So that's the problem when you use computers. You know, resolutions mean a lot when you go from one system to the other system. But Commissioners, back in 1992, there was an agreement that only stayed in effect for about 6 months. And it was for the county to maintain approximately 10.6 miles of city roads. And at that time, according to the agreement, the city was going to pay $36,000 annually to the county to maintain. Don't believe any money was ever exchanged during that process. And then in April of 1993, there was a new interlocal agreement executed between the city and the county, where the county agreed to maintain 2.3 miles of city roads in the outlying areas of the city, where you had county maintenance and you have a little portion of the city street. So we agreed to maintain that. And then the city basically took over maintenance of about 2.7 miles of county roads within the city limits. And then from that point on, we had amendment over amendment over amendment of the 1993 agreement. So in 1995, there was another agreement where there was 0.189, if you want to be exact, and I guess I need to press the button, of Northwest 32nd Avenue, or County Road Northwest 38, that went to the city. And so therefore that mileage for the city maintenance increased by that much. And what you're going to see in all these amendments, there was more miles added. Then in February 1996, there was another 0.37 miles of added to the city maintenance. Again in September 96, 0.048. And then in 2007, not too long ago, we found correspondence from city staff at that time, where 4.9 miles or 5 miles were then also transferred to the city for maintenance. That making the total for city maintenance of approximately 8.3 miles. And then again in 2012, just 5 years ago, an additional 6.143 miles for a total of 14.4 miles. That was 14.44 miles of county roads that the city would maintain. There have been numerous deeds given by the county to the city, but only 3 of those deeds actually were on roads that were on those interlocals. Most of them were from the 1992 interlocals. So it was interesting to find that out. So it seems that in 1992, the interlocal was to maintain roadways that were transferred to the city, but then the city didn't have equipment at that time to maintain them, so the county was to maintain them for a few months, and then my understanding is that then the city bought equipment and started maintaining them. But from the 1993 agreement, there's 3 deeds that were transferred to the city. Northwest 32nd Avenue, Northwest 62nd Avenue, and then again Northwest 32nd Avenue. So when you subtract those, really what our tally is that city maintenance right now is around 13.8 miles of county roads through the city. So that's really what we found just going through all the interlocals, going back and forth. Very tedious exercise because some interlocals were based on a legal descriptions, others were based from an intersection to an intersection. Some of them had mileage, some of them did not. So staff actually had to go even and had to talk to the county surveyor, and we had to get the mileage that way. So that slide you really cannot see, but that's just 2 two tables coming are just deeds that the county transferred to the city. Most of them are based on a 1992 agreement, and that's why we had the interlocal reference there. As you can see, there's quite a few of them. And then we also actually found in 2008, the city entered into a contract with the county to chip seal Southwest 15th Avenue, where the city actually paid the county $175,000 to do that. And once again, in 2012, there was also a request from the city to do Southwest 30th Avenue and Southwest 266th Street. So those were done, and that's a quote from the contract that we got. So just shows that cooperation between the two entities doing work and growing. That map, you really cannot see that much. We do have PDF files of the longer maps, but really that map just shows all the mileage that according to our tally of the interlocals and going back and forth, that's what we show it. I know your Public Works Director here, Jamie, has also maps, and there might be some differences here and there. Some of them might be rounding errors, some of them might be just disagreements on whether or not roads were transferred, but that's something for discussion. So that's really our presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be here. But I believe now we should hear Jamie or the city to make that presentation.
Both commissions all right with moving straight to the next presentation? All right. I think we're going to, our very own utility director, Jamie Jones, is going to lead us in this presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. As
Welcome.
Ramon said, this has been a very complex, complicated issue to try to resolve. It dates back 25 years and predates most of the staff, I believe, in both organizations. Just to give you a little background, if it will advance.
That says background, and you're having a hard time seeing it. There we go.
As I stated, it dates back approximately 25 years, and as Ramon said, the interlocal has been amended 7 times, and it spoke to maintaining the roads, basically at the county's level of service, not improving the roads, but just basic maintenance. And the ownership, as Ramon stated, is been hard to unravel due to time, the legal descriptions, and not being tied to the current 911 names of the roads in question. Slide here basically gives you an idea of the level of service that the county provides and the level of service that the city of Newberry provides. We have estimated our costs for road grading and right-of-way mowing at $3,270 per mile per year for grading, $400 per mile per year on right-of-way mowing. And as you can see, the estimates that we derived from Alachua County were from a 2006 report. The statute referenced in this slide basically was adopted and identifies that the status of the road as of June 10th, I believe, in 1995, that after that date, that the road could only be transferred by mutual agreement, that both parties actually had to agree to the transfer. A lot of graphics, evidently. When we started this process approximately 2 years ago, these were the two maps, the counties on the right and the cities on the left, and the disagreements we had as to who owns certain roads. The map you see before you identifies the roads that are being maintained now by the city and by the county. And initially, as it states, we did agree on the ownership of certain roads, but disagreed on others, as identified in red. The county staff has provided deeds on those roads. We've actually had a surveyor take a look at those and the dates that the transfer actually occurred to identify if it was before or after the statute and whether it referred to the original interlocal or a subsequent amendment. And if the process for transfer was properly and legally done, then the dispute would be resolved on any of the roads in question. This map here denotes the ones that we've agreed on. and some of the segments that are in question. And as Ramon stated, the differential between what the county is maintaining for us and what we're maintaining for the county that's not in dispute is approximately 11.5 miles, with a cost to the city of approximately $28,500 annually to mow and grade those roads. This slide here just denotes some of the county chip seal plans as they've identified this year. It should be noted, though, that chip seal is a surface treatment. It's not a road improvement. It's basically a surface treatment that has a lifespan of 10 to 15 years. And slide before you there just delineates the type roads that we have within the city of Newberry and within the county, from local to collector, minor arterial, major arterial.
I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say to chip seal a road is not an improvement?
It's a surface treatment improvement. It's not a base and sub-base improvement as a paving project.
So it's not considered an improvement of level of service?
It is an improvement of level of service, but it is not up to the standard of paving a road.
Oh, no. So it's not up to the level of paving a road, but from going from a dirt road to a chip seal road, does everybody agree that that's an improvement?
That is an improvement, and we take the surface treatment language basically from your 2006 report, that it is an upgrade to the current status of the road, but it doesn't arise to the level of improvement of paving that road.
No question. Okay. Dirt road, paved road, but not a real road. Thank you.
And if any of the commission has any questions.
I have one
Mr.
question.
Chair.
Commissioner Pinkerton and then Commissioner
The one bullet point says, if legally transferred, dispute resolved. Are you saying it was resolved or it wasn't resolved?
There is still some question as to the transfer of certain roads. That's more of a question for the city attorney and county attorney, because there is an acceptance process. You can deed anything at any time, but after 95, it actually had to be formally accepted by the entity that you was deeding it to, is my understanding, but the city attorney could probably speak to that better than I could.
So there's a question whether it was legally transferred. That's what that bullet point is.
Yes.
Okay. But the ones that are in question were all done before 1995?
The ones that we're not positive about were after 1995.
Okay. Can you tell us what specifically which roads those were?
Not off the top of my head, but we could go back to the map and see if I can blow it up enough that you can see it.
Okay. That would be helpful.
The roads there in red are the ones that were in question.
Okay.
Which on our sheet is,
Southwest 30, Southwest 46.
So
That would be Southwest 30th and Southwest 46, is that correct?
That is
Primary.
two of them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hutchinson, 1 second, Commissioner Byerly, and then, or unless, is it to this point, Commissioner Hutchinson?
Yeah, my only question is, where's the question that we offered them or that Newberry accepted them? Is that, I mean...
Or didn't accept them?
Or didn't accept them?
Well, we have a deed, but I have not been able to find any acceptance document. It may exist, but I haven't.
So really if we sent a deed, the question would be, is somewhere in the Newberry minutes where you've accepted it?
If there was some mutual agreement for the county to convey the road and the city to accept the road.
Commissioner Byerly?
Prior to this discussion, I was not familiar with the 1995 law, which does things, and your presentation is reasonably straightforward, but I want to make sure I understand what the law does. Any annexation after 1995 annexation has no effect on the ownership responsibility for the roadways, or it does?
Annexation didn't have any effect before 1995. Annexation does not change the ownership of the road. It has to be conveyed.
So even if a road segment that is entirely within an annexed area by a city takes place, it's still the county's responsibility?
Exactly. It's typical all over the state that even if you annex an area, that the road remains county or state. If the basic premise of that statute was not only for cities, but it was also for the counties, because prior to that, DOT would convey roads to the county. Sometimes the county wanted them, sometimes the county didn't. But that was the whole gist of that statute.
And reasoning extends to subdivisions?
I would assume so, but it may be a question for the city or county
So
attorney.
the city of Gainesville, let's say, they've in recent years annexed big chunks of what was once the county's responsibility. Maybe this is a question for the county attorney. And I was not aware that whole subdivisions that were annexed by a city remained the responsibility of the county. Is that the case? Can you answer that?
I think the county attorney or city attorney may be.
Madam Attorney, you want to come on up and give Commissioner Byerly
Could I,
a response?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to interrupt, but I have a suggestion that I would like to pose to both bodies that I think goes to your questions. Because in my research on this issue, I've been listening to your conversations and talking to other municipalities, and it seems to me like what we have here is a 20-year-old mess that has seen changing laws and changing boundaries of the city. And I believe I speak for the majority of my commission when we believe that a road that's within the city of Newberry that only has a citywide impact should be a city of Newberry road. And we believe that a road that has regional impact should be a county road. So before we get into the legalese and the back and forth, if our two bodies could agree on that policy decision, then we could look at both of our staffs right now and say, I know that we've had a 2-year discussion going on here trying to figure out who owns these roads, but we've been trying to figure out legal descriptions and we've been trying to figure out legalese. Why don't we just look at the map with that common sense approach? And if a city only has a citywide impact, then we'll accept that deed. If a road has regional countywide impact, even if it's a city road, you guys will accept that deed, and we'll get this straightened out once and for all. And if we agree on that ideology, we'll just let the chips fall where they may in terms of who ends up owning which roads.
It seems like a reasonable approach, but the problem is we may just be moving the controversy back to a new place, which is defining regional versus citywide, and what is the method that we use to determine whether a road has only city impacts or countywide impacts. If I understand you correctly, it's possible for a road that is entirely within the city of Newberry, begins and ends in the city of Newberry. Would you define that as city-only impacts, or would you define that as regional impacts?
Well, I'm not going to try to define it for everybody. I would say the parameters for me would be that it starts outside of Newberry and ends outside of Newberry. That would be first and foremost. If it's a collector street, I'm not a roads guy, but I'm trying to pick up this terminology. If it's a pass-through, obviously Newberry Road is surrounded by Newberry, but primarily the traffic on Newberry Road is not from Newberry residents, it's from people passing through. So it seems like we can come up with some common sense standards to say, some of the roads that I'm looking at that are legally county roads, your staff doesn't dispute it, we don't dispute it. I have no idea why that's a county road. It only serves primarily Newberry people. It's right in the city of Newberry. Some of these roads certainly seem to me to have regional impact. I don't know why they belong to the city of Newberry. They should be the counties. So, we can stick with the legal descriptions that everybody agrees with now, and we'll either work out a deal to continue maintaining them or we won't, or we can try to clean up this mess once and for all and identify what really is a regional impact road, and you guys will take that, and what really just has city impact, and we'll take that.
Well, again, that's kind of what we, I guess, need to decide, and I'm not sure how
did my description go?
Criteria apply to the road segments that we're going to be talking about tonight. I really don't know. I haven't seen them mapped out in a way that I could tell. But I would like to, if possible, get an answer to the question about subdivisions.
Hang on one second, man. We'll have...
I know there's comments.
Yes.
You're talking about
Hang on one second, man, but let's get this and we'll do it in order. Thank you. All right, so
Are you able to answer that question? Should I repeat it? The subdivision with subdivision-only roads, one way in, one way out, is annexed by a city. Does the county remain responsible?
Michelle Lieberman, Alachua County Attorney. I can tell you that the statute says that roads do not transfer unless there is an agreement for those roads to transfer. So upon annexation, roads don't transfer unless there's an agreement for them to transfer.
And, Mike, can I just jump in here? I was going to ask staff, if you were to be asked, based on what the mayor just said, which of these roads in dispute are regional impact type roads versus city roads. I mean, I'm kind of looking at the list. Most of them appear to be city roads. Is staff prepared to give an opinion, a preliminary opinion to this commission about that, so that we can then have a policy discussion perhaps? Speaking as one commissioner to the city commissioners, one county commissioner, if that approach is that your citizens are asking for obviously a higher level of service, municipal service on many of these dirt roads, and the city is willing to take ownership of those roads, and this commissioner is okay with agreeing to that, as long as we have consensus on, or a majority on this commission that believes that. My question for our staff is, under that type of scenario, it would seem like we would deed over a majority of these roads, certainly the roads that are in dispute, unless I'm missing something on your map. Mr. Gavarete?
Commissioner Cornell, Mr. Chairman, my definition of regional is one, and I really see this map and I don't see any roads of regional impact except Newberry, and that's a state road. All the others basically end or go in between city roads. So, but that'll be maybe a discussion between staff first before we get to that point. But just today, my definition of regional would not fit, with the exception of Newberry Road, any of those roads in that map.
So I guess my question to the city commission would be, are there any roads on here that you don't think you should own?
I would say,
and maybe we could target this discussion and focus this discussion around
Commissioner Martin.
what they...
Have a second question when the time comes.
Okay, well, why don't we let Commissioner Biley ask the second question, and we'll turn it over to the city commission.
By all means.
Is that okay? Commissioner Biley?
We're talking a lot about, and are going to talk more tonight about a couple of terms that I'd like our staff to just define for the benefit of the public and also to refresh our memories. Tell us what chip sealing is, how it differs from a full-blown paving, and how it differs from the quote-unquote alternative surface treatment that the county used for 10 years for the gas tax to treat roads prior to our current staff, who have now introduced this terminology of chip sealing. What's the difference between, I think it was coal tar sealing or something like that, alternative surface treatment that we did 10 years worth of gas tax roads? What's the difference between that and chip sealing and standardized paving?
Mr. Gavarete, so you're not going to ask Mr. Harriet to stand up next to you and help with this, are you? You're going to do this all on your own? Okay.
Prior to 2007, commissioners, from what I have gathered in the history here of Alachua County, we did do dust control in some roadways. That was basically just laying down some kind of dust control measures, chemical measures.
Product.
Yes, resin-based product. That was just for dust control. The other method that was mentioned in the 2007 report from Public Works Director at the time to the board was something called sand seal, which is basically bituminous material, tack, mixed in with sand instead of gravel and put over the road. That would also cut down on the dust problem, but also didn't give you any structural value really.
Maybe that's not what I'm asking about then. The gas tax, the additional nickel that is due to be renewed that we've had for the last 10 years, the county commission set aside 15% of that additional nickel for what was described as alternative surface treatment, not full-blown paving, but something else. And was that something else chip sealing?
The alternative surface treatment that was used by your staff at the time was chip sealing.
It's the same thing we're now talking about doing tonight.
It's the same method, yes, sir.
And what happens with the chip seal?
Chip seal, what you do is you go in there, you add some lime rock or millings, you mix them in, you compact. At the end, you get anywhere between 4 to 6 inches of base material, and then you put a layer of tack oil. You put gravel on top, and then you and then you roll it, and then you can actually put what's called a fog seal, which is another layer that you put on top. So it does give you a structural value better than just a lime rock, but it's not as good as a paved asphalt surface.
Are you familiar with the Special Assessment District Northeast 132nd Avenue project that the county did 10 years ago?
Yes.
Was that a chip seal?
No, that at that time was what you would call, well, it used to be called soul cement. It was basically injecting and mixing in the gravel and the lime rock and put them in. That failed, as you know, and then just recently last year, we did chip seal that surface.
Okay, thank you.
My turn. I thought they, yeah.
I commend both staffs' efforts to try to get this all figured out. I know it's got to get pretty tedious. What I think I'd like to see from the staffs is maybe a get together and give us collectively some characteristics of what these roads, how many trips we have going down these roads, where are people going on them. I don't need to know where the deed was and the transfer. I don't need to get that down into the weeds about it, but I think I need more information of the characteristics of the roads, so maybe we can policy-wise develop where we want to kind of draw the lines. I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to work together and get something that's kind of been gray a little bit more definitive, especially moving forward for commissions that are going to be coming behind us, and just basically hit the reset button on this.
Mr. Mayor, I think we have an opportunity here as far as going forward. What we could do is have an interlocal agreement as far as with annexations. Here's what transpires. And I think that part of it could be, and the rule of thumb that we've been using, if the road begins outside a municipality, as you said, or ends, it goes through, then that's been kind of the county's road. And, but as you go forward with annexations, if it begins and ends in the city, then in my opinion, it should be a city road. While that approach hasn't worked with the city of Gainesville necessarily, I would hope that going forward, perhaps we could come up with something with an interlocal agreement that takes care of some of the complexities of annexation. And I think this would be one way of doing it.
I agree. I agree with Commissioner Martin that we have an opportunity here to clearing up a lot of this mess. I think that the residents that live in Newberry, or the residents that live within the Newberry area but are in an unincorporated area, they really don't care who owns the road. They just want somebody to come work on the road. So if we can get this issue put to bed, because these people pay our salaries and your salaries as well, and they just want us to fix this. I agree with the logic that I've heard you use with other municipalities. I believe the majority of this commission agrees with that logic. If the road is only serving Newberry, it should be our road. We'll take it. If the road has a regional impact, then it should be y'all's road. So is there any other board that wants to make a comment before we open up to the public?
I just have it might not make any sense, but how did it ever happen that the county became in charge of roads that are in Newberry? I mean, why would they ever had to deal with our roads inside of Newberry? Do you know how that started?
Well, you're going way back in history now, but I think Newberry used to be much smaller.
Wasn't Newberry when it started?
It wasn't Newberry when it got started. In my memory, 46 has always meant, not to disagree with your expert there, but 46 was always meant to take some of the traffic off of 26 and to get people into Gainesville. So that's kind of wrapped up in my definition of what's a regional road. Are we using it to get to Newberry and get around to Newberry, or are we using it to get somewhere else in the county? So when I look at the map, I think the majority of these roads should be in the city of Newberry. I think there's a couple of them that are clearly should be in the county. And again, my approach to governance is not to start with where do we win or lose, but to start with what's right, and then let the chips fall where they may. So I'm glad to hear that there's some support for this idea. I think we can put that back on our staffs to go through and work out these details. If everybody's willing to accept that some of these may be of regional impact and a lot of these may just be of citywide impact, I think we can move forward together.
Okay, do you conclude? So before we get to Commissioner Byerly, I heard someone say Southwest 46. Is that the only road? Oh, just one of them. Okay,
I
Commissioner
think
Briley.
Southwest 46 and Southwest 30th would be the two. 15th, I would argue,
Starts in Newberry.
starts in Newberry, but that's a county road, according to everybody agrees that belongs to the county. So that's what I mean. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you look at the map of who owns which roads. So I don't like to kick the can down the road. Let's fix this. Let's get it to where it makes logical sense, so that future commissions don't have to have this same issue, and future residents don't have to have the same frustrations when they call us and we say, well, it's a county road, we can't do anything about it. That's a city road. So,
Okay, Commissioner Byerly and then Commissioner Hutchinson.
I'm going to offer a motion.
Please.
You want to speak before I put a motion on the floor, Hutch?
We-
Okay, in an effort to,
I'm sorry, we generally like to let the public comment just in case anything they say changes the motion. Would you like to stick with that philosophy, or do you guys
we
want to put a
generally
motion?
put a motion on the floor to give
Go.
the public something to speak to.
That's fine,
That
we'll-
way they know what they're
no
speaking
problem.
about.
But then we
I
can
don't
amend
care.
the motion after that.
That's fine.
Commissioner
Doesn't matter-
Byerly?
Doesn't matter to me.
No, let's go ahead and get a motion on the floor for the public to speak to. I think that's good.
I would move that we direct county staff to ask to work with the City of Newberry staff to develop a process for identifying maintenance responsibility for the roadway segments that are currently in contention going forward, and come back to their respective boards with a plan or a proposal for assigning future maintenance responsibility. And I'm going to go ahead and add at least one criteria, see if everyone's comfortable with that, and that would be that if a roadway begins and ends within a municipality, and by the way, I'd like to apply this logic elsewhere. I'm glad that the City of Newberry is stepping forward in this way, and if it works out here, I think we'll have to take it on the road, so to speak. So one of the criteria would be that the road segment begins, if it begins and ends within a municipality, it should be the responsibility of the municipality. Is everyone comfortable with that?
I think I heard the mayor say begins or ends.
Well, I'm saying begins and ends. It's city responsibility.
Okay.
If it begins in one and ends in the other, then that's something our staff needs to figure out with direction from both boards. And if anyone else wants to add any additional criteria, I'm happy to add it to the motion, but that would be my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Accept it,
We
especially
have
the
Commissioner
definition.
Pincusson seconding Commissioner Byerly, Commissioner Hutchinson, and then I see Commissioner Coleman over
The
there.
the
wants to
only
jump in.
complexity is that there are places within Newberry that aren't Newberry, and so we need to account for that and not assume that just because a portion of the road goes through unincorporated Alachua County because it's an enclave,
Like 226.
that that's not an out.
Well, I think in listening to what I've heard the commissioners say and then having lunch with the mayor last week, I think the intent is if these are roads serviced by the citizens of Newberry, then Newberry is willing to take ownership and then ultimate maintenance responsibility of those roads. Obviously, the devil's always in the details, but I think that motion gives at least the county commission staff some policy direction, and if the city commission is amenable to what comes back from that, then I agree. This is something that we could take on the road, and I know Commissioner Pincusson has been talking about this since he was elected. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Martin. I had one question before you make a motion.
Hutch took my glory anyways.
Okay. I just want to make sure the implication in your motion is, therefore, if it does end and begin and end, then that would be a county road. Is that?
If it begins and ends in the
If it
city-
begins and ends, if it begins outside of the city and ends outside of the city, that would be therefore a county road. So I heard the city side of it, but
that logic.
that is your logic.
I think in
That
both
is-
cases, that's presumptive unless there's some other condition that makes.
I just want it into the record. So if the road begins outside of the city and ends outside of the city, then you guys would take ownership of that road. If it's within the city, we would take ownership of that road. If it's just
Hard to imagine a scenario where I wouldn't agree with that.
okay, I just want to make sure that was into the record.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Commissioner Byerly, can you also, is it agreeable to actually get a list back from the policy of staff of what the roads would be? So if it's 30th and 46th, then we can understand what we're talking about from a policy perspective.
Yeah, they're supposed to come back to us with a resolution, hopefully, or if you're at impasse, where you're at impasse, on which roads go to which party.
Okay,
Okay,
good enough?
I like it.
Okay.
So would we like to duplicate that motion and then before we open it up to citizen comments? Do I have a second? I have a motion by Commissioner McGehee, second by Commissioner Farnsworth. Before we vote, we have a
Counselor?
attorney that'd like to make it.
Mr. Chair, the only thing that confuses those definitions is a lot of these roadways have several enclaves. that make it not wholly within the city, and I think that's what Commissioner Hutchinson was referring to. And so that kind of confuses the definition somewhat. If we could use that guidance as staff to work with the city and then bring back between the staffs the proposed which roads would be which, because of the several enclaves that have been created over the years, that is not going to completely meet those definitions, but we would use that as our guide.
Commissioner Riley?
I would hope that city and county staff could sort of be reasonable with each other, and if it looks like the overwhelming majority of a road that starts and ends in the city is still bordered by an enclave, so that most of the people who use the road are unincorporated area residents, then that would tilt it towards the county and vice versa. That makes sense to everyone.
I would echo that hope for reasonableness. Mr. New, would you like to make a comment?
Not wanting to be the one to put the fly in the ointment, but from
Always
staff's
the
perspective,
precursors.
that this could be a tool that both entities could use to help eliminate enclaves, and that if there was some skin in the game for the county, as in we would need to get this road transferred to Newberry to help us eliminate enclaves, that would certainly be attractive to Newberry staff.
We would love that assistance.
I think you have a majority and almost probably a unanimous group of county commissioners that are interested in helping Newberry eliminate enclaves. Is that without objection? Do you agree, commissioners?
Not necessarily. It depends upon what the individuals own the property. I think that they have a say-so in the matter, that they're, if they would like to.
Voluntary enclaves or voluntary annexations as well?
Voluntary annexation, yeah.
Involuntary, okay.
We're not looking to force anybody here, but we got a lot of people who would like to close those out.
We did talk about that.
Right. Commissioner Glanzer?
I just have one question. So if Newberry grows and the property, our limits end up outside of where the road is now, you'd have to give us back the road. I mean, if right now it's a road that begins and ends in the county, but as we grow, our limits go beyond that, then you would give us back that road? Then we'd have to take it back, yeah. I just want to know that there's another side of that too. So.
Sure. But if we grow, we should have some money to help maintain those roads. So, okay. Before we, Commissioner Martin?
The only speed bump here, pun
One more
intended.
speed bump.
Pun intended. When we apply that to, for instance, 46th Avenue, although the blue segment begins and ends inside the city limits, the preponderance of it does. But what are we talking about with the segment that's east of 202nd that goes out to 170th, which is rarely, ideally, the terminus of the road, so that people can go there and get up to Newberry Road and come around.
I think the criteria is whether the road, not the section that Newberry owns, because the county owns the majority of 46, which is just a piece of 46. So if the road begins outside of Newberry and ends outside of Newberry, and people are using that road like Commissioner Pinkerton does, primarily to get to Gainesville, not to come to Newberry, then they would take back.
The people at Hardee's know me by name, so.
They've got national award-winning biscuits at our Hardee's here, so I can understand that. Does that make sense, Commissioner Martin? Okay, we'd like to now open the floor to the public for comments, questions. Come on up and please read your name into the, by procedure rule, we need it for the record, so you have to read your name. People at home know who you are and introduce yourself to us.
Okay. I am Vicki Gaultney, Gaultney. Looks like Gaultney. I live on Southwest 226th Street. You have Northwest 226th Terrace. So you're not even talking about anything that I know anything about. But Mike is 1 mile long, south of Newberry Road. Anything south is going to be southwest. And it's been halfway chip sealed. Millet, talk with lime or rock right now. Halfway down, halfway to my acre. I have 6 1/4 acres, and it's halfway. So you've got the wrong addresses, is what I'm pointing out. So 202nd Street, unless it's northwest out by the Gatorback, is going to be southwest. So you've got the wrong addressing here. Critical, I would say. I would think everybody would want to know that point. And you're talking about enclaves. your new development out here on 27, a lot of people are going to avoid the intersection up here of the light by taking the back road between the middle school, coming to 226th or 202nd, and cutting down to catch Newberry Road. So that's not going to be local access only unless you make it local access only. But I just want to point that out. Most importantly, you got the wrong address. That's why I wanted to say something. You guys are not even on the same page when it comes to Northwest, Southwest. And I've lived here since 76, not in Alachua County. I've lived here since 94, and we've owned since 85. So, you know, I know how it's divided, Main Street, University, Southwest, North, all that. So kind of critical to have those directions right. And I don't know where 226 Terrace even is, so.
We appreciate the clarification. We'll make sure our maps are.
Okay, make sure that's right.
Yeah.
So thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Welcome, sir. Please state your name for the record for us.
Do I need to take an oath or something?
No,
real quick,
no,
okay.
we're not that formal.
All right, cool.
We
my name's
you.
Naim. It's spelled N-A-I-M. Last name is Erched, E-R-C-H-E-D. Born and raised in Miami-Dade County. So traffic, I can tell you every bit you want to hear about it, okay? I live in the new development this young lady was just talking about, called Oakview. We have beautiful roads. Of course, because they're brand new. So I shouldn't even be talking here. I'm good. However, I'm going to side with my citizens here. This motion is great. I love the improvements. I love that. Thank you, Mayor, first off, for saying, hey, let's fix this 20-year-old problem. My concern is this is great. What's happening now? Are we going to keep bickering back and forth like high school students? Or are we going to get the job done that needs to be done currently? Things that belong to the city, stop arguing about it, let the city take ownership. What belongs to the county as of today by city attorney, county attorneys, you guys know what you own. Own up to it. That's it. Plain and simple. Yeah, I know it sucks to pay a bill, but just pay it. And then when the motions go through, we'll deal with it then. But my concern is I'm hearing all this for tomorrow. Well, what's happening right now? This poor lady has chip and seal up and down her driveway that looks like garbage. If that was your road, I'm pretty confident you guys would be stepping up the game and calling somebody in maintenance to get it done. Like I said, I have no reason to be up here because my road is beautiful in Oakview. Can't complain. However, I see myself in her shoes. All of a sudden, no one gives 3/4 for what's going on with my road because it belongs to the city, no, it belongs to the county. Listen, thank you, Marlo. Thank you very much, sir, for just saying, let's kill this 20-year problem. What's going on now, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you.
Well, how are we going to fix it?
Thank you. Welcome, sir.
My name is Donald Shepard, and my last name's spelt the same way in the Bible. I call myself the people's representative, and in 2018, I'm going to be taking the Alachua County seat of Kennell, and I'm a people's representative first. So in that aspect, I want things addressed quarterly. And should I come here tonight? I guess I come dressed wrong. I should have worn my cowboy hat and cowboy boots because every record I'm seeing is way outdated. I don't understand that why you all let this take and happen all these years. And even the blind man sitting next to me is saying, what is this crap? We got this 93, 92 records what we're speaking about now. We shouldn't be talking about that. We should be talking about dates that are affecting us as of today. Another thing I want to speak about is our taxes. It's easy to place taxes on people, but how do you collect them if the people don't have them? Are you going to do like the city of Gainesville's doing, annex our homes and take them away from them and put them on the streets? Then have to build a homeless shelter like the city of Gainesville? Well, city and county better take a real high look at this because it could have happened here. It happened in Stark, it happened in Waldo.
can happen right here. What's going to help this, which is I don't hear anybody mention, is what's happening in Alachua. They got in their plans to take and put a truck stop in their town. That truck stop.
Mr. Shepherd, if you could just stick to the motion. Just stick to the motion.
We have a 2-minute time limit, by the way, so you got 30 seconds left.
This truck stop is going to bring a lot of taxes to you because these truck drivers, companies need to be paying a higher tax to pay for the things that the citizens are not able to pay.
All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate the comment.
And I thank you all for welcoming here, but I see a whole fistful of improvements that need to be done in this town, and too many people on commission has been sitting on their buffs and collecting their paychecks and not doing their jobs.
Thank you. Any other comments tonight?
My name is Jenny McCoy, M-C-K-O-Y, the real one. Just wanted to mention 226th Street. When they went in and halfway put down the first layer of the road, you couldn't even drive over it. And I called and talked to the board, to the roads department, I guess, and they explained that the first layer that they had taken was not really the way it was supposed to be. It was a mistake, I guess, if you will, and that they were going to come in and they were going to cover the road with lime rock. And once that lime rock would stay on the road until September when they got their new machine, and then they would come in and chip seal the road. The thing is we've had rain, not just rain, but downpours every day. And that lime rock is already washing off the road, and so that material that they put down initially is washing, the lime rock's washing off, and now we've got a problem with the road again. And
Ms.
it's
McCoy?
worse of a problem than we had
Sure.
before it started.
Could we maybe ask?
Yeah, so thank you, Ms. McCoy, for your comments, and I don't mean to cut you off, but could we get our, Mr. Manager, someone from our staff to give us an update on the two chip seal projects, 202 and 226?
And Ms. McCoy, you got 45 seconds left if you got to close the comments, but I wanted to get to the information that you were
And Mr. Gabarrete, if you could maybe just give a little bit of history to just kind of bring us all up to speed and then where we are. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. The Board of County Commissioners on May, I want to say May 2nd, I might be getting my dates wrong now. May 2nd authorized staff to move forward with chip sealing 226 and 202nd Avenue, in addition to other three roads that were on the previous list that the Board of County Commissioners had approved. Staff then moved on into starting to move materials and starting to do some work. Unfortunately, later, a few weeks later after that, on June 8th, the board instructed staff to stop. So we did. But we had already started. So I told my staff, go back there and try to make it as safe as possible for now until we can get what we're going to end up doing now on these roads. Unfortunately, like the lady said, we have had a lot of rains, and staff has been back on those roads trying to keep it. So that's where we are today. Now, my understanding is the Board of County Commissioners, again last week, I believe was on Thursday, did authorize staff to move forward to complete those roads. Because of the fact that staff has been dealing with storm damage right now, we haven't been back to the roads to do it, but that's where it stands today.
Manager, anything to add to that? Okay, and Mr. Gabarrete, can you give the good citizens of Newberry any timetable on 202 and 226 based on your best estimate of what the weather's going to be?
Well, if the decision from the board is still to complete those two roads, staff, weather permitting, we'll be back on those roads within the next, if not this week, next week, to make it safer and all that. The machine is not set to get here either late July or early August. There is a lot of work to be done between then and now, so we need to mix in more millings, mix in more lime rock, compact, and also take care of some of the drainage considerations that have to be taken care of. It's not just chip sealing the road. So if the direction from the board is to continue doing that, staff will be back on those roads within a week or two.
And then the milling, machine actually gets here late July and August, which
Yes.
is when, realistically, when citizens will begin to see a real difference in their
Well,
road.
once the machine gets here, we're trying to do a lot of the legwork prior to the machine getting here. Once the machine is here, it's a matter of a week to get the tack oiled on, the stone set down, and then the compaction. So, but we're trying to do a lot of the legwork that has to be done prior to that, to the machine getting here.
And thank you, Mr. Gavrete. And just to give some clarity on kind of the timeline, this board voted to move forward on May 2nd, but the machine wasn't coming until July. We did not change direction. We voted 2-2 to hold off on having another discussion about it until after this meeting. The direction didn't change. We then reaffirmed that direction last week with Commissioner Pinkerton, and correct me, Mr. Manager, if I'm misspeaking. We then reaffirmed that because we wanted to make sure that we sent a clear message to citizens of Newberry, but we also wanted to have tonight to have an opportunity to discuss not only about 2 roads, but about all the roads. And until that machine arrives, this job cannot be done, and that will be, as you just heard, July or August. Commissioners, anybody want to add to what I just said?
Would this be the time to talk about that 2-2 vote, or do you want to wait till after we dispose of this motion?
I think it would be appropriate to just hear from the citizens, and then we can talk about that.
Have any other citizens that would like to talk about the motion on the floor about a policy decision, both staffs looking at citywide impact versus regional impact?
Hi, my name is Sherry Brodeur, and I actually live in Gilchrist County, but I'm having an issue based on your roads, so that's why I'm here today. I'm a half mile into Gilchrist County where 30th and 80th become one street at County Line Road. So you've got 298 and you've got 30th, and then as soon as it crosses into Gilchrist County, it becomes 80th Street. So we have a lot of traffic on that road. It's a dirt road, but we have a lot of traffic, not just watermelon trucks, trucks of all kinds, cars coming from Bronson, Archer, wherever they're coming from, up and down 298, and then on those 2 roads. There are no stop signs there. It's a really, really dangerous corner. So I had called to ask about stop signs, and I was told I have to wait until we know who owns the road. So here I am. Just to let you know, when you get to that point, if it's possible, as you're talking about this, to also start looking at some of the questions that some of us have out here. I'm going to Gilchrist County next, requesting the other 2 stop signs so that it's a 4-way stop at that corner. That's a really bad section anyway, because it's a 30-mile-an-hour road and people do about 75 down that. So just letting you know that there are other issues that are coming into play when you start looking at these roads that we're not able to fix till we know who is in charge and who's doing what out there. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Brodeur. It's 30th, turns into 80th at Gilchrist.
Okay, come on down, Miss Betty. Don't want to introduce yourself into the record. And you can pull that microphone down if you need to. Not off the podium, Miss Betty, just there you go.
Okay.
You're doing fine.
I'm Betty Wood, just plain one tree, not a forest. I live on Southwest 226th Street, and 47 years. They passed my property with the milling and the lime rock, and I'm tickled to death. In my understanding, my question is, y'all are going through to chip seal it. It'll just be down the road. It's going to come. I've waited many years, but there's hope at the end of the rainbow. Is that where I'm at?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Betty. Any other citizen comments about the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, let the county take their vote first.
County Commission, any other comments? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? The motion is unanimous.
All right, Newberry Commission, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. All right,
So, Mr.
thank
Mayor,
you.
before we move on to the
Please.
next item on the agenda, Commissioner Byerly and then Commissioner Pinkerton.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask to put a few comments on the record now.
Let's do it.
I think the decision that the county commission is making is going to have some pretty significant consequences in the future. and I want to kind of go ahead and get that discussion started now. And it takes a little bit of history. It'll take about 30, 45 seconds to give the history. When we adopted the gas tax, the additional nickel gas tax back in 2006, Commissioner Pinkerton was there at the time. None of the other my other colleagues were. Most of the money went into road maintenance, maintaining, taking care of the paved road infrastructure. 15% of it we set aside for paving dirt roads, which we didn't do before. We'd never done that before. We didn't have any funding source for that. We weren't paving dirt roads, period. But 15% of that was for paving dirt roads. There are several hundred miles of dirt roads in the county, so as you can imagine, when the word went out that the county was about to start paving dirt roads, everyone wanted their road paved. Everyone wanted their road paved. And we got a lot of feedback as to why we ought to do this road versus that road. And we had this many roads to pave and that much money to do the paving. And there was only one way to go about the process of trying to assure the public that we were going to do it as fair and openly and even-handedly as we possibly could. So rather than arbitrarily picking roads on the basis of how many squeaky wheels came to the podium, we tried to develop more of an objective process. We developed a formula in advance before running any of the roads through it. It used several different criteria, like the number of trips on the road, the length of the road, the annualized cost to maintain the road for the county. A number of different variables went into it. Established cases of people with health problems related to dust on the road, the number of accidents. We developed a list of criteria, developed a formula in public hearing with public input, a lot of public input, and at the end of that came up with a formula we all agreed to, and then we applied it to all of our unpaved road network and developed a prioritized list on that basis. And a certain number of segments we could do with that pot of money, and the rest of them we couldn't. And we told the public, and I did a lot of this, I'm sure Lee did as well, telling the public why the road's not on the list, or why it is, and what it's going to take for them to get on the list, and why we did it that way. And it wasn't just who knows who, but we tried to have an objective, open process that everyone could go back and see how we did it. So, the gas money expired very recently this year, but we still have this list that did a good job of objectively prioritizing which roads get paved if we come up with money. In my opinion, that's the only fair way to do that. The only fair way to do that is through that mechanism, and if we deviate from that, public confidence in the process we went through will be undermined. It'll be destroyed. It's going to be who knows who. And I'm very, very concerned that the action we took to include 2 roads from the city of Newberry in our paving process that weren't on the list is doing exactly that. Early May, I was one of 5 commissioners who voted 5-0 to do that, and that was my mistake, and I own it now. And I've gone back and watched the meeting, and I know exactly the point at which my mind left the path. I did not understand what I was voting on. I did not understand, even though Mr. Gavarete did say it at the beginning of his comments, I did not understand that the 2 road segments in question were not on our list, and were not the next ones in line. I thought that we had new money, they're the next projects on the list, give us authorization to proceed, and I voted for it, and that's my mistake. I brought it back up at a subsequent meeting. We have some folks who did a special assessment district who come to see us on a regular basis. You all know who I'm talking about. It's a program wherein citizens who weren't anywhere on the list and knew, and they, after that process, understood we're not going to get our road paved in our lifetimes, they have the option of taxing themselves to build the road, and the county would go in and do it. And we've done a few of these. And one of the ones that we've done, some of the residents there have come back to us year after year asking, if you've got new money, think about us. We're paying for it now, and it's hard on all of us. And they have learned about our action with Newberry recently. In fact, it came to my attention that way because I missed it until it was pointed out to me. You changed the list. And they visited a couple of us today, in fact, just to refresh our memories. I invited them to come out here tonight, but I don't see them. So that's where we are now. It's not that I don't want the folks in this room to have the dirt road paved, but I was part of a process that developed a list that I had confidence in, and I could go to the public and say, we're being fair about this, and I don't think we're doing it now. Good to you, Newberry, if you're getting your roads paved, but believe me, you have a lot of neighbors in this county who are going to be unhappy about it if they learn about it, because we promised them something different, and now we're going down a different path. And I don't know how to correct it. I tried to stop it. There was a 2-2 vote at the time. I had to leave the meeting the other day. I had a family emergency and had to leave. Well, I wouldn't say early, it was after 4 hours or so, but I had to leave before the meeting concluded. So I guess you guys voted to continue with it in my absence, which is unfortunate, because where we left it was that we would come out here tonight and have a discussion in front of Newberry, rather than making a decision ourselves, and we would make a decision after that. Doesn't sound like that happened. But I want the board to think about what we're going to do and how we're going to explain this mess to the rest of the community when they come to us and say, why did Newberry get special treatment? Why are you using the list anymore? And I'm now asking you to pave my road. What is the basis for us telling them no? And again, the only argument I've heard put up against this is that this was for the gas tax money, that 10 years which recently expired, but that's not really the point. The point is that list is the fairest way we have to decide who gets paved and who doesn't. And I think we ought to stick to it, and I just needed to get those comments on the record because it's coming up in our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Byerly, and I appreciate you all sitting through that. We've been struggling with this for the last couple of weeks. Commissioner Pinkerton, then Commissioner Hutchinson, and then I'll give a couple comments.
And sorry y'all are having to listen to the county commission discussion, but Ms. Gavarate, those two roads were on the list, were they not? They weren't on the list at all? Okay, all right. Well, the problem, Mike, is when at that meeting we were told that work really hadn't begun on those roads. But what happened was we found out later through the emails that we received was work had in fact been started. And I think that at that point it put us in an awkward position. You know, what are we going to do? Go back and scrape everything that we've done off and carry it off? And so I think we all felt like, okay, it's already begun. We're going to have to live with this. So, and at the time, at least I feel like we did the right thing at that point in time, simply because we'd already started. The conversation that you wanted to have, had we not started the project, I think would have made sense. We would have talked about it a lot, but the circumstances changed because we'd already started the project. So,
Commissioner Hudson.
Well, now I'll revise my speech, and that is until the county posts a sign on every dirt road that says go to this website and you'll see where your road is, owners and realtors will continue to sell houses as your road's about to get paved. I know it will be. I've heard it. And the problem is that we have to have a publicly accessible list that everybody can look at and see that their road is number 87 and it won't get paved in their lifetime. Because until we do that, literally everybody comes to us and says, hey, I bought the house 3 years ago, when are you paving my road? And that's just the way people are. And the county, for whatever reason, refuses to put a sign on every road saying, this is a county-maintained road. If you want to know when it's going to be paved, go to this website. There's the list. And until we do that, we're going to continue to have this problem.
Thank you,
commissioners will have the problem. I'd love to be able to look up on the list and see where people are, but I can't even do that research.
Commissioner Pinkerton.
and I apologize, I didn't. Ms. Gavarate, one more. Ms. Gavarate, Ramon, one other question. Didn't you say when you were given on May 2nd? Didn't you say that that these two roads that we were chip sealing in Newberry were a result of the conversations that have been ongoing with the city of Newberry as far as the maintenance? I believe either you told me outside that meeting or during that meeting.
Yes, Commissioner, we've had those conversations with the Public Works Director for the city of Newberry, and that's when we took that to the board.
And so part of this in the conversation should be, it's a little bit different because we were asked by the city of Newberry, as opposed, this didn't come from the residents themselves, although we may have heard from the residents. This was a negotiated deal through this 2-year conversation that we've been having to hopefully further the conversations. Is that?
I personally did not have any emails or conversations with any residents on those two roads.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Chestnut and then Commissioner Barley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify some things first. When it first came to us and it was a 2-2 tie, or before the 2-2 tie, we were also instructed that work had not started on those roads. And then last Thursday is when Commissioner Pinkerton brought it to our attention that the work had started on those two roads. And so at that point, there was a motion was made, and since it had already been started, it doesn't make sense to stop it at midpoint here and say forget about it. So we voted to go forward with it because it made sense to do it that way. And then we'll address with those other circumstances as they come along. So I just want to clarify that initially we were told that it had not started and that we were going to come here and to discuss it with the city of Newberry. But it didn't work out that way. Some things had changed in terms of the information we received earlier was not accurate. That's the point I just want to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barley? Then I'll make some final comments and we'll
I know
move
we
on.
need to move on, but I mean, I don't believe one mistake justifies another, and in this case, we have to decide which was the bigger mistake. Throwing out the list, which, by the way, Commissioner Hutchinson, I don't understand. We do have a list, and it's publicly accessible, and anyone can go to it. That's the list that we're...
Then,
Just a second, if I can just finish my thoughts. I just want to wait till everyone's listening.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Barley.
We do have a list.
Yes.
And everyone can go and see right now. They can find out where they are on that list. So I disagree with those comments. And if that's the reason that you voted to proceed with this, I would ask you to reconsider. That's the list that we're about to throw out. And I don't know what is going to take its place. And so I don't know if you all have any thoughts about that, and it does impact Newberry. But I would ask that Mr. Gavarete or someone tell us where we are in the two projects. I heard it represented tonight that we've gone so far down this road that we can't pull back. And
Can
so-
you also tell residents
Are there
watching
two-
where they locate this list so they can go? Is there a website that you can give us?
And there are two road segments, so you can tell me where we are on both of them relative to being finished with the projects.
Gavarete?
Yes, Commissioner. On 226, staff did start to move materials in place. After the board vote of May 2nd, I was asked by the road department, can we start moving material? I said yes, and that's what I said in my email to the board. In my mind, that was okay, stop moving into place, stockpiling it. Staff took it one step further, and they started doing the project already because that was the instruction of the board. So when I told the board that we were stockpiling and not starting, that's what I knew at that time. So fast forwarding now, the list is available also on the website. And if you go to the county website in the public works section, you will find the list there. I'll get actually with staff tomorrow to make sure that that list is there. The list only includes the first, I believe, is the top 40 or 46 roadway segments that the board had approved at that time, of which I believe around 26 of those segments were done back in between 2007 and 2012 or 2010. So that's where that list is, but that's where we are today.
Could you explain where you are? There are two different road segments we're talking about chip sealing, correct?
202 and 226.
And where are we on each of those two projects? in terms of
226
getting the
was
job
when
done?
226 was where staff really started moving material and spreading it. I don't believe there was much of that done in 202nd. And we also started moving material into 2082.
So one of the two projects was commenced, the other one was not.
We did some in 202nd, but not as much to the extent I did in 226.
What did you do?
202nd, all they were
one second,
supposed to be doing was stockpiling material, but 226, they definitely started.
202, they just have some pile of stuffs out there. It's
It-
not like we
it's-
couldn't
it's-
stop the project.
It's up to the Board of County Commissioners.
And on the first one, what did we do? Is it irreversible?
Well, you can always go and remove the material and compact.
But what if you just, I don't understand. So in its current condition, is it a hazard?
It's not a hazard in its current condition. It does have a lot of loose material this time. We would have to go there and compact and mix in more the millings that were put in.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, so my thoughts on this is here is how I believe it might be different, Commissioner Barley. I don't know of another city that is having a conversation with the county that is saying we will want to take over the roads. And so on these two particular roads, 202 and 226, I believe those are in that discussion that we just passed that motion back about for both of our staffs to bring back. I agree with you that knowing now what I know, if I had known on May 2nd what I now know, that perhaps my vote would have been different. I agree with you in meeting with Ms. Mabel Blake today that there's a number of other questions that I have regarding the process that I think when we have our policy discussion with the county commission And while you all are welcome to attend, I wouldn't ask you to sit through that. I think we can address some of those issues that occurred and that we probably need to do some things to make it right up in High Springs for those citizens, and I'm very open to that discussion. I also agree with you that the most current and updated list needs to have a systematic methodology. I've been told, I'm working off memory now, that the first is trips, the second is health as far as dust, the third is safety, and that I do want to have a robust county commission discussion about that methodology, because I think if there are trips of citizens, those are different than if there are trips to specific businesses that road is providing trips to. And so those are issues that I think we ought to address at the county commission level when we have that next discussion. So at that point, those are my initial thoughts from the meetings I've had. I need to have some discussions with staff, which I've not had a chance to do, regarding not only the High Springs issue, but also the issue with regards to the policy discussions that we're going to be having going forward. And I think that as we chip seal roads in certain cities and cities take on ownership of those roads, I think that works for both sides. I appreciate this fact that the city of Newberry is willing to take on ownership of not only these two roads, but many of these dirt roads that are on this list as well. And I think it'll serve as a path forward for us to have further discussions with other cities. So that's where I am, Commissioners.
Thank you all for the conversation. I'm sure we all found that interesting. So at this point, we'll move on to now item C, the fire services discussion. Mr. New, are you going to introduce Ben, or are you going to bring Ben straight on up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, introduce Ben Buckner, our fire chief, is going to lead us in this presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just a brief presentation this evening regarding two things: the fire station expansion that's currently underway, and the Part B of that would be the fire services master plan. Let's see here. The progression on the station expansion is approximately 60% complete at this time as of May 20th. Foundation slab, electrical, some of the MEP stuff, metal subroof, the trusses are on there. They've decked they're decking the roof now. HVAC trunk lines in place. The budget for the project was right around $602,000. Total square footage is 2,270 square feet, of which 832 square feet is for non-conditioned ambulance bay to house an ambulance, 1,438 square feet for additional condition space. In looking at the Part B of this presentation, when the expansion was approved by our commission, one of the things we did is we went back and we looked at the master plan, the fire services master plan, and seeing that an ambulance was scheduled to come out in Newberry at some future time, the commission had the forward thinking to go ahead and plan for that. So part of that project, part of this current expansion project, includes not only the ambulance bay, but sleeping quarters, living quarters, and office space for personnel to staff that ambulance. The substantial completion date is mid-August. The final completion is mid-September of this year. As you can see by some of the progression pictures here, these are just photos we've taken over the construction phase. Oops. There we go. Photo to the left is as you're looking into the ambulance bay. The photo on the right is the east elevation. On the photo on the right, you can see the ambulance bay, the roof structures currently going on there at that time. This is the floor plan. It's kind of difficult to see, but I outlined it in red. The red is all the expanded, the additional condition space, or the additional space that was added, the 2,270 square feet. The green areas are areas that are being renovated. As you'll notice in the bottom, across the bottom there at the red, in that red box, looks like there's ceiling fans in there. Looks like there's 5 of them. Those are sleeping quarters for the crew. Well, we have 4 personnel on duty. The ambulance crew would be 2, so that makes 6. If you'll look over to the right, the green box on the right is the new sleeping quarters for our lieutenant, which is currently in office at this point. The green box to the left is the EMS office for the ambulance crew. So as you can see, we integrated the ambulance bay, the sleeping quarters, the living quarters, and the office space for planning for the master plan, the implementation of the master plan. Okay, Part B is just a few. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions about the station expansion? No. Okay. Okay. Just the growth. I was fortunate to watch the BOCC meeting on Thursday. I believe it was the 22nd. One of the items that was discussed was about growth and how ambulances are placed and how those kind of things are put into fruition. Newberry's population growth since April 15 to April of 16 is 10.9%. Our overall growth from 2010 to 2016 is 20%. Newberry is the 16th fastest growing city in the state. We're now the 3rd largest, or from a population standpoint, the 3rd largest municipality in the county, behind Gainesville and the city of Alachua. So growth is something that's certainly happening in Newberry. And this is, there was some other discussion on Thursday, and this presentation was done prior to that, so it was kind of good to hear some of the conversation that the county commissioners had during your meeting Thursday. This is a presentation. This slide here is an excerpt from a presentation that Chief Northcutt gave back in March of 16, and these are the rule average turnaround times for an ambulance. Now, that's from dispatch to available. That's not from dispatch to back in station. That's just from the time you get dispatched till the time you pick the patient up, you take the patient to the hospital, you deliver that patient, transfer care to the hospital, and you become available. If you'll look at FY15 and compare those times to FY10, there's a pretty significant change. And that change is not a good change. It didn't go, those numbers did not go the right way. What we'd all like to see, in other words, those numbers going down, those numbers went up. So there's definitely, and again, this is FY15 data, the last column. But this is directly out of the master plan that has been adopted by the BOCC. If you'll notice, the black asterisks are the additional stations. They show one in High Springs, they show one in Newberry, one being put in Alachua, one in Micanopy, and what they're calling New Station D right there. So those are the additions that are recommended by the Fire Services Master Plan. And if you look at this map, one thing that you'll kind of see, look at where Newberry's at in relation to where the ambulances are at within the county. Those are some pretty good travel distances, Our closest unit is 17, which is in Jonesville, 39th Avenue and 143rd Street, which, by the way, is about 10 miles away. It's a little under 10 miles away, if they're in station. The next slide is also right out of the presentation from March of 16 that Chief Northcutt presented. I added the stuff on the left, those arrows. This was kind of I won't say it's the list, or the order, but this was the order that these stations were listed in the master plan. And if you'll notice, the first 3 have either been accomplished by the county, or some variation of accomplishment has been achieved on those first 3, and you'll see that Newberry is 4th there. The first one is Rescue 20, being moved to Station 21 in Alachua. What the county did is they decided, Fire Rescue Services, they decided to move Rescue 2 into Station 21. Well, what that allowed to happen was Rescue 20 to stay in its current location. So you've got 21 now has an ambulance, which was old Rescue 2, and in Station 21, and then Rescue 20 remain in its current standalone location out by the transfer facility. So the next item on the list was Rescue 25, relocating the city of Hawthorne. That's been accomplished. Then the third item is new unit at Station 29 in High Springs. I'm not going to speak for Chief Norcutt, but my guess is they left 20 in that area for that implementation of that third item. Just kind of give you an idea, between Rescue 20 and Station 21, which is where 2 ambulances are at, that distance is about 4.3 miles. And if you recall what I said earlier, our closest one is just under 10. Our call load, and I know you guys asked this from Chief Norcutt and his staff on Thursday. I don't have the most up-to-date CAD response times, but I know with the addition of the CC trucks, our response times to Newberry have not gone down, and we all thought they would, and the county, I think, believed that they would as well. The call load, as Chief Norcutt indicated Thursday, the call load is outrunning the ambulances. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. That is what's happened. I believe the number that was given Thursday was 3,000 was the average ambulance. Each ambulance was run about, each 24-hour truck was run about 3,000 calls prior to the implementation of the CC trucks. That call number now is up to about 3,050. So, as you can see, though, in this slide, the proposed, with the implementation of the proposed ambulances and the fire services master plan, that rule 12-minute response can be achieved about 99% of the time. That's pretty good. We're nowhere near 12 minutes right now. I believe our last numbers were in the 15-minute range if the unit was in station. The average was probably around 15 and a half, 16 minutes. So we're well above that 12-minute goal that everybody looks for. That's the end of the presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I think Chief Norcutt.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, Chief Norcutt, did you want to add anything to that? I know we had a preliminary discussion. The discussion, Commissioners, at the County Commission was a budget-related discussion. We're adding another peak load, and the discussion was, should we add a peak load, or it's more money, do a 24-hour resource, and I, for those that watch, you got to see kind of the numbers of that. And Chief, did you want to add anything to that presentation?
I think Chief Buckner certainly did a good job of pointing out some of the deficits that we have, and geographically with the map that shows the geography of the west side is fairly sparsely staffed with rescues. After the discussion on Thursday, we started the process of designing the territory that a unit here would cover to look at what those response numbers are. We're going to look at least a 5-year trend, if we get a 10-year trend in there, to show what the response times for a rescue into this area are. At this point, we can't say that. As you pointed out, during the budget process this year, we asked for actually both units, a 24-hour unit and another peak load unit, and just through the budget process, you weren't able to achieve that at this point. So we certainly hope to have, geographically, this is certainly the right place, a good place to put a unit. The master plan's recommended the added units were really recommended west side and south side, and this is an area that has continued to grow. On the response side, however, we should have that within the next 2 months. We should be able to show you exactly what those trends are.
Commissioners, any questions on our side?
Do my commissioners have any questions for the county chief? Commissioner Martin?
More a comment than a question. I just wanted to make sure that we were aware. Periodically, and becoming more frequently in our city with the Champions Park and with Easton, it's not uncommon a couple of times a year for us to actually double or nearly double our population out here. Certainly an ambulance would be very advantageous, and I know some of the facilities like Gatorback do hire staff in there right away to cover their actual events, but if we can just have the asterisk, so to speak, of the numbers to where it's not all necessarily population, because we have a lot of weekend population, so to speak.
I just want to thank both of the chiefs for those comments, and I'm hoping that Newberry is doing a good job of giving you guys the impression that we are more than willing to pay our fair share. we look at y'all's master plan and where you guys are headed, and we see that we're pretty close on that list, and we don't have a place to house the ambulance. So this commission, in their financial wisdom and responsibility to essential services, said we've got to address that need. So we stepped up to the plate to do that. So I commend them for doing that. It is an essential need. It's a need that our residents, it's a pressing need. Our response times are going the wrong way. So we wanted to address that, so we're not coming to the county and saying, hey, we need an ambulance out here and we need a place to put it and we need y'all to do all of that for us. We want to meet you guys at least halfway. I do also want to clarify my position and understanding of an ambulance. Certainly we would expect that we've housed the ambulance, we have a home base, but once that ambulance is out on call, it's going to be sent to wherever it is needed at that time. All we're looking for in Newberry is to up our odds. We want to up our odds to get that response time. So if anybody is under the impression that we expect it to only serve Newberry, that's not what our commission is saying at all. What we want to do is clearly we're the fastest growing city in the county. Clearly the growth is happening out here. Your master plan has identified that. We're following your lead on this, so we appreciate that you guys have put that master plan out and you guys have said that. So I guess my only question would be, with the passage of the fire assessment, does that mean you will now move forward with the implementing of the master plan?
Separate, but Chief, you want to go ahead and
I can
address that?
There are two elements of the master plan. One is fire, which is covered by the MSTU, or as the board is evolving toward the fire assessment. The rescues are funded out of the general fund, and while we operate under the same roof, they're funded out of completely different pots of money, and that is general fund as support as well as the fee-based, but it would not be impacted by the assessment.
That's certainly true, sir, but we do the same thing out here with our own fire assessment, and part of the sales there is that when we do a fire assessment, that frees up your money in your general fund to do the other thing. So it seems like when y'all's conversations, that was your understanding as well, that by passing the fire assessment, that would free up general funds to move forward with the master plan. You're saying that's not y'all's understanding at all?
That is actually true for city government, municipalities, but the county government has a county-wide service, and then they have services only within the unincorporated area. The MSTU is services only within unincorporated. The general fund is county-wide service, and the ambulances serve that county-wide function.
So what's your idea? Do you have a timeline for implementation of your
I'd tell you my
of your master plan? It's your master plan. I'm just asking. Tell me when you're going to
I'll answer that for the chief. His timeline is he put it in the budget for this year. And
we have lots of master plans, though.
Yeah, we're arguing about it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the boards, either board, on this issue?
Right.
Any questions from the audience about fire services? Come on up, Mr.
Well, they speak pretty well on behalf of the city, I have to say.
Restate your name for the record, please, sir. It's part of the rules.
Naim, N-A-I-M, last name is E-R-C-H-E-D. 2 minutes started?
2 minutes.
Okay, my bad. So, just to clear the air for the citizens here, are we going to get an ambulance or not? Is this something that we just built, this nice fire station, to help our citizens just to look pretty? Or are we going to actually help our citizens and other surrounding areas? Because I'm pretty confident if a call goes out in another city, we're gonna reach out if we're available. So is this actually going to happen, or is this just all talk, like the roads talk? So that's my concern. Because we did a great job, and our fire guys, they deserve a heck of a place to stay and rest their heads when they're not on calls. But if we don't have an ambulance if I have an asthma, my daughter has an asthma attack, she doesn't have 10 seconds to spare. So I'm pretty confident you would want the same treatment for your kids to make sure it's the best. And if there's one ambulance available and we have a place to house it, how soon are we looking at getting that? How soon can we move that budget? No.
Thank you.
As soon as we can, I guess, would that be our response?
All right. I have faith that we all care about public safety as our utmost. And when you look at the demographics, it becomes pretty clear. 2 minutes, sir.
My
Go.
question is exactly the same. When are we going to get this implemented, and how many more ambulances can we get within the year 2018, which is upcoming, that we can implement to take and make this area more safe for the public? If we have an accident on the roads out here, it's travel time's a good half hour to get to them, to 35 minutes. And this here is something that a survey probably has been done. I haven't been seeing them yet. I will be looking into them. And so, in the interest of the public, I'd like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd.
Any other citizen comments? Have you timed your comment this time, or you got it?
No, I do not have a written. This is spur of the moment.
All right.
Bonnie Hauser. My question, the $600,000 looks great. I love it. I see it every day taking my daughter out to Easton.
Beautiful.
But that money, was that from taxpayer money? Or were there grants involved?
There was a sale of a tower for $280,000, I believe is the number that was earmarked for that expansion, because we've been on the master plan for a while as being, now we are the very next. For a while there, it was High Springs and then us, but we were trying to read the tea leaves.
But that other $400,000.
The other $400,000 we funded.
Okay, so here's my concern about that.
It wasn't just
I
the ambulance
understand-
bay. It wasn't just the ambulance bay.
Right,
There was a
I know,
whole bunch of
but
issues
from
with the
looking
station.
at the plans, a whole lot of that $600,000 went into the bay for the ambulance.
That was $80,000
A
of it.
place, well, a place to house the people that are going to be there. It's just frustrating when our tax money is going to something that may or may not be used. It may or may not be beneficial. When I pay city taxes, I want it to be beneficial for our city. And that's my only comment on it. I mean, it's over and done. There's nothing you can do about it now. But I just think going forward, whoever's elected will think about that. We don't just spend it on, cross our fingers and hope that the county gives us something for our money.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other citizen comments?
Mr. Mayor, how much additional money was put in the ambulance bay?
I want to say the ambulance bay, just the was 80,000. Is that correct, Mr. New?
Of the 600, so
Of
of
the
the
600, we had a lot of upgrades we had to do. We did need the additional space, so that Ms. Hauser's comment there is absolutely accurate.
We bid the project with a deductive alternate to eliminate the ambulance bay.
Okay.
And the contractor offered $85,000 deduct if we eliminated the ambulance bay. Probably standalone, the ambulance bay and the sleeping quarters and office area for future staff would be closer to $100,000 all rolled up. But just in terms of how you get deductive credits back in those types of bid situations, it's never dollar
So
for
this
dollar.
commission made a decision, instead of spending $515,000, let's spend $600,000. Is that accurate?
That's a good way to characterize it.
Thank you for those comments. Okay.
Any other citizen comments about the? Come on down, ma'am. Don't forget to restate your name just for the record.
Vicki Gaulnay. Can the ambulance go to the new emergency room instead of all the way to North Florida? And if they get there, do they have to wait to see if they have to transport them on to North Florida? Is that a different?
It's a full-service emergency room, so as
That's
soon
what I
as they're
thought, too.
admitted in, then they can be released and be
So
put
isn't
back into the system.
Isn't the distance different now then? Are they
It is.
addressing that map from across
That's-
from I-75?
Yes, ma'am, that's a great question. That's
'Cause
one of
that's
the things
Parker
our
Road.
chief is looking at with the recent call data. That data you looked at was through 15, and that just came online. And not just that location, but there's another location coming online on 43rd and 53rd. And so they're trying to project how that reduction in taking it all the way to North Florida or all the way to Shands will change the system with regards to response times. And so that's what, when they come back to us in a couple months, we've asked that they consider, because those putting those emergency rooms farther out into the western part should improve the turnaround time on the system.
And secondly, I kind of did the math real quick, but if you eliminate the ambulance bay right now, you're looking at, it ran kind of like $265 a square foot, including the ambulance bay and the whole numbers, it's $400 a square foot. Is that typical for commercial construction? I suppose there's sprinkler systems and lighting systems, but my dad was a contractor, and I know about these things, and that sounds like a whole lot of money that was spent, that maybe that contractor, give you a deal at $80,000 off if you'll do both deals. It's like, that's a lot of money per square foot. Isn't that how the math goes?
Commissioner McGehee?
I think one thing you have to remember, though, is that fire station is still functioning. Those contractors are working around. That's still a live station.
I know,
which
and they've been a live
does.
Station, and the guys are there sleeping at night and stuff. So they're extending that. I understand that, but I'm not talking.
I'm talking about the cost. The cost per square foot. The cost per square foot is going to go up because the contractors are having to work around. It's not an empty station.
Well, anyway, it sounded like a lot of money per square foot.
Commissioner Coleman.
And another thing is that we had to meet, I guess, state guidelines, Mayor, because it's not just men, there's women, and they were having to share the same areas. We were big time outdated, so that was another reason we went in and done that. And I voted for this, and I was 100% behind it. We have a lot of elderly people here, and I went on this premise that if we build it, hopefully they're going to come here.
Well, it might
and
be,
we were next on the list.
It might be kind of like those home improvement shows where the beds are provided, everything's provided, but linens, whatever's, maybe that's included in the numbers. I don't know, but it just sounded like a lot per square foot.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. New.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, the price per square foot, if you just look at the amount of square foot that's being added, it is high. But just as all you know, we bid everything publicly. There were several bids on this project, so we selected the lowest bid. And one of the things that isn't in our advertising is the amount of remodeling is extensive. We didn't just put a roof on the new area. We roofed over the entirety of the building. So instead of 2,000 square foot of roofing, we have probably 5,000 square foot of roofing, 5,000 square foot of drop ceiling, 5,000 square foot of carpet. So it's more than we wanted to pay, but we did solicit competitive bids. This contractor was quite a bit lower than some of the others. We had one that was pushing $1 million. So we got as good a value as I think we can get on the commercial market. It's just things are expensive, and it's funny to say 2 years ago everything was great in terms of construction pricing because no one had work, and the construction economy has robustly rebounded, and there's a shortage of contractors. I think we did $60,000 worth of value engineering after bids came in. So it's as good, I believe it's as good a price as we could have got. And I think that the City Commission's foresight in building the ambulance bay, I know it would be great to wait until the county commits, but the county's going through their budget process right now, and they'll adopt that budget in 3 short months. And it takes about a year to move a project from ready to bid to complete construction. And so we needed to be in front of that ambulance and not behind it. So I think that our commission exhibited great foresight, knowing that we can't snap our fingers and make that ambulance bay happen, that it needed to be in place ahead of the county commission making a decision.
I think that was well said, Mr. New. And I don't want to rehash a decision that's already been made and is almost at completion. One thing I can tell you about being a farmer is you never have enough bays. So something will go in that bay. And I believe if you look at a map, the population's coming to Newberry. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And when the county has the money and they see the need, we'll keep pressing that. We think the need's already there. They'll keep looking for the money, I'm sure, and we'll meet in the middle eventually and bring that service to the residents. So are there any more citizen comments about fire service? Hearing none, I'd love to.
Before we move on, I just want to thank Chief Buckner, men and women of Newberry that serve the fire department. You guys serve the unincorporated as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now for the item, this is our repeat item, 3 times in a row. We've talked about the Community Redevelopment Agency. I think every time we talk about it, we all agree and we all look at our staffs and say, next year, we're going to have a CRA. So I'm hopeful that's what's about to be presented to us.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, I introduce Brian Thomas, our Planning and Economic Development Director, to lead us in this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's say third time's a charm. Just a brief update. We've been working with county staff back and forth for quite some time now. This interlocal agreement draft that you have before you is the result of that. I believe that the county had a lot of concerns, and a lot of that was based on previous performance of other CRAs or lack of performance. And so I think we've worked all that out. I think the draft before you has met with hopefully the conditions the county was concerned about, the situations. Just some of the highlights. The CRA will, the initial term will be 20 years. If at the end of 20 years both governing bodies believe that the CRA has been of value and is doing a good job, there's the option to extend for another 20 years or up to another 20 years. But again, that takes the vote of both governing bodies, which is a change from the past. Some of the previous CRAs had automatic extensions in their terms, and this does not. Must be approved. The plan itself, and this follows state statute, but the plan itself has to be approved by both governing bodies, and so it'll be a uniform plan that everybody, I believe, if it gets through, can agree on, and there will be no avenue for amending that plan without having, again, both governing bodies in approval and voting in favor of it. There were certain undeveloped tracts within the proposed district that the county was concerned about, and the way that we've addressed that is in the draft. Those tracts themselves would not qualify for funding. They could still be in the district, but they would not qualify for funding. We might be able to bring infrastructure to the doorstep perhaps, but specifically spending money on those tracts would not happen because they're not developed, and so you can't redevelop an undeveloped tract. The county was concerned about how much was going to be spent on administrative costs. Some of the other CRAs have had some fairly high costs, and so given that we anticipate it's going to be quite some time before the CRA actually starts accumulating much in the way of funds, limit that to 30% of the CRA collected funds for administrative. And so at least in the initial several years, we anticipate that the city basically will be just picking up the cost for administration on that, because there won't be a whole lot of money to work with initially. And of course, the project funds are to be used to mitigate blight and slum conditions, and a few things that qualify for that also are incompatible land uses and such. So it'll be limited to that. And it also the agreement sets up a means for dispute resolution. If either party doesn't believe the other party is performing, then there's a whole series of actions can be taken to remedy that. And so another large issue is funding. Previous CRAs received a much larger amount of funding from the county side, in that they were basing it on the county millage rate, and then the city, whatever the city millage rate, they contributed their share. And under the new CRA, this would be an equal amount. So whatever the city's millage rate is, 95% of the increment of the valuation on that would go from the city side, and then the county would match the funds that the city's putting in, not a larger amount. And so their contribution will be based on whatever the city's contribution. And of course, in years where there's no increase in value, potentially there's no increase in going into the TIF fund. Another source of concern was indebtedness. A lot of CRIs will take out bonds and such to fund larger capital improvement programs, and the concern was that we would be potentially indebting the county to continue contributing to those debts after the term of the CRA had run over. So at any point in which the CRA would take on some kind of debt, if they ever took on any debt, to fund capital improvement programs, then those terms of that indebtedness cannot exceed the remaining term of the CRA. So if there's only 10 years left on the CRA, the total length of the bond could only be 10 years and no longer. Not just through an agreement to extend, but the entire CRA term would have to be extended before then you could go and actually discuss extending the indebtedness. And so hopefully those are most of the terms that, or all the terms I think that the county was concerned about, and we worked those different
So
issues
Brian,
out.
are we voting on this, and we have as we're ready to vote?
We just want your approval to go forward, get this on both of the agendas for both the City Commission and the County Commission for approval of the interlocal agreement. Once that's approved, then another whole series of events starts to take place, moving towards
So next year?
creation. Shooting for January 1st.
January 1st is.
Commissioner Pinkerton and then Commissioner Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that we're learning about through some of the other CRAs is when do you signal that you've achieved success, and when's it time to end the CRA? So in y'all's CRA, and I haven't read it recently, have y'all put goals in there so that when you get to that point, you can end? When you've achieved, because now with the city of Gainesville, they're trying to change the dynamics as far as what a CRA is. Instead of addressing blight and, a blight situation, now it's gone to more touchy-feely things about people within the CRA, which is not what the CRAs were intended to do. So,
Mr. Mayor, the interlocal agreement itself doesn't address that. However, there's ample opportunity in the actual CRA plan once it's formulated and goes before the commissions for their joint approval to certainly add that element in there and add more specifics to how that would be judged when you've reached that point.
Okay.
And so we could add a lot more specificity in the actual plan.
Okay. Commissioner Hutchinson.
Well, I like everything that I've heard. I think Commissioner Pinkston gets a lot of credit for pushing many of those issues. And unless I hear otherwise, I would move that the County Commission signal to our staff that this item is ready to put on our County Commission agenda.
We got a motion and a second to ask staff to bring it back before the County Commission. I want to hear from the attorney, but Commissioner Barley, do you want to speak?
I just want to say that I don't believe we received
Your,
any.
I don't know if your microphone's on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
I don't know if it's working or not. I don't believe we've received any new information since we had our meeting here in Newberry a year ago, have we? This is all brand new discussion to me, and there's no backup, so I am personally not committing anything. We had a discussion in which we aired some concerns. I still have those concerns. I don't know whether they've been addressed or not, and I don't know what's being proposed for consideration. I'm uncomfortable moving forward with the discussion on placing it on our agenda unless I know we're ready. Prime time.
Counselor, are we ready for prime time?
Mr. Chair, I don't know that we quite are. There was a motion that I believe it might have been at the last joint meeting for our staffs to move forward with this. The last part that we provided some comments back, I believe, on the agreement and left it in Newberry's court at that time. The city of Newberry opted to sit on the agreement pending all the legislative issues that were going on, so that sat there for some period of time. Now that the legislative session has concluded and the CRA legislation did not get adopted, they've now brought that back to us. Now, of course, we have concerns. When's the base year? When does the money start? Of course, we have nothing in the budget for fiscal year 18 proposed because this sat for that period of time. So we need to make sure we know what the base year is, when those payments would start, et cetera, because it sat for a while.
Why did it sit until after the legislature? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Well, legislature's going to do away with the CRA.
Why work on it if you don't know if it's going to be there?
Yeah.
Mr. Thomas.
Okay.
That's
Well,
exactly
that's like
right,
saying
Mr.
why
Mayor,
build a
is,
bay unless you know you're going to have an ambulance. I can use the same argument.
Initially, there was a House bill, HB 13, and its companion Senate Bill 1770, which basically aimed at eliminating not only any future CRAs, but all existing CRAs as well. And so until that played out in the legislature, we didn't feel it was prudent to spend time trying to move things forward. Neither one of those moved through the legislature ultimately and died in committee. And so now we're ready to move forward. And that's basically where we're at. As far as budgeting, though, the only funds that would go, as you're all aware, the only funds that would be committed to this would be if there's an increase in the value of the district, then it would be an based on that increment. It wouldn't be there wouldn't be any reduction in existing revenues or any demands on existing revenues.
So Commissioner Byerly, did you want to offer a substitute motion?
I would just ask that county staff provide us with an update at our next meeting. An update. I'm not ready to vote on anything. I don't know if we're ready to vote on
Right now, we've got a motion on the floor to direct
My
staff.
substitute motion is that it be placed on our agenda for an update on the Newberry CRA process by county staff.
You got a second on the substitute motion. Thank you, Commissioner Byerly.
Could I ask why do we don't have that information ready right now after 3 years of county staff and city staff? Even with the delay, it seems like we should be
in that spirit
farther along.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask, what was the motion we approved at the meeting a year ago? Does anyone have that?
I don't know, is Steve here from the clerk's office that could put? Oh, okay.
Mr.
Counselor?
Chair,
Yep.
it was for staffs to work together to come back with an agreement, but that agreement, the last draft of that was left with the city of Newberry. That was delayed because of the legislation. So now we have to go back and look because we need to make sure as far as base year, starting year for payments, et cetera, because we've been informed by the Office of Management and Budget that there is no funds budgeted for fiscal year 18 for the Newberry CRA. So we need to go back now and take a look now that it's back on the table, which we just understood just recently it was back on the table. So
But aren't those TIF funds calculated a year out? So even if they set the base year right now, I mean, we wouldn't set it in the past.
The current agreement says beginning January 1, 2018, and we did not budget anything for fiscal year 2018, so we need to ensure that the agreement is clear when the base year starts and when the payments will start.
Commissioner Byerly?
I'm working from memory. I thought that
I'm sorry, we left the ball in Newberry's court. We understand now that Newberry is ready to move forward now that the legislative session is concluded. And so we need to go back and just verify the agreement and that everything in there is where it needs to be because we didn't budget in FY18 for the Newberry CRA.
And at that discussion a year ago, we identified several issues of concern we went around the dais and everything, and I thought that we included in a motion the things we were concerned about. For instance, one of the things I remember, I don't remember at all, certainly, was the area that had been identified and whether or not it was all blight or whether or not some of it was undeveloped land.
Right.
And we were going to have a discussion about that. Our staffs were. I don't know if you've had that discussion or not. I have no idea whether or not there's been any movement. So we need to learn.
It sounded to me, from my memory, and I certainly am not claiming to remember everything that we put in there, but it sounds to me like Mr. Thomas addressed pretty much everything that I could remember as those points. So it seems to me, and I will certainly talk to my staff about the sitting on it, but I've followed these emails back and forth fairly closely, and there's a pretty good time gap when we send an email to the county before we get an email back from the county. So it sounds like we've got, on both sides, we have some time issues. So, I don't want to pull the rug out from this thing when we are right here at the finish line, but we've also been right here at the finish line for 3 years. This is my third joint meeting where the elective body have been pretty clear about we want to have this thing done by next year. We're giving you a year to make this thing happen. So I guess if once again, if I'm looking at 5 people and say we want to make this happen, and we think that we can get it done by January 1st, then let's do it. But I guess I'd like you guys to be honest with my commission. If this is going to be another 3-year process, we have a limited staff, and frankly, there's other things that they should be focused on if we're just never going to bring this to fruition.
Well, to that point, I mean, I think the motion is for staff to bring it back to us at the next available meeting, so I think that's pretty immediate.
And I think
That
we
sounds
were-
good to me.
We were pretty explicit and detailed in our discussion a year ago.
We were.
And if what comes forward to us does not take that discussion into account, then the answer is no, this commissioner won't be voting for it. I don't know how else to say it.
Sounds fair enough.
Commissioner Hudson?
And every single item that Mr. Thomas said were those things that we brought up. He went right down the list, and it sounded like the county got everything that we wanted.
Sounds
He spoke to the unimproved land.
Do you see a map?
No.
Then what are you talking about?
Well, because we have to approve the ultimate plan. So
Yes, we do.
if you see something in the ultimate plan you don't like,
I
then you
thought,
vote against it.
that's what we were being asked right now. Are
No.
we going to vote for the plan?
No, we're asked to allow them to set up the CRA, but not to approve their plan.
In
And
my-
that still comes to us.
So, yeah, so I think, so sometimes we argue and we agree. So I think what I've heard is that we've asked staff to bring back, based on what we heard, Mr. Thomas addressed many of those items at our next available meeting for us to deliberate. So that was a substitute motion. Your motion was to signal that we agree, and I think there is a distinction to those motions. So we'll vote first on the substitute, see if we get 3 votes. If not, then we'll move to the original motion. But I like, just to give my comments, not that, but it may matter. I appreciate all the things that you addressed. I think those have addressed many of my concerns. My big concern that I remember was the map. Does it include the entire city, or does it include areas of blight? And that's what I want to take that map, and I want to go drive around your city, maybe with the mayor, and we can talk about it. Or maybe with Mr. Coleman, Commissioner Coleman, or one, I'm happy, or certainly with Commissioner Glanzer. So I'm happy to do that, and look forward to doing that.
Just, Mr. Mayor, for a point of clarification, the interlocal agreement, basically all it does is authorize us to then go out and do the finding of necessity, create the actual draft of the plan, and start the process. And that's kind of what's been, I know frustration on both sides has been, we just want to be able to pull the trigger to actually start the process of creating the plan that'll then come back before the commissions for their approval.
So if you got direction or a signal back from the county commission in the next couple of months, would that give you time to do that by January 1st?
That I don't know, but we'll do everything we can to make that happen by then. And that's the other thing too. I mean, as far as the January 1st would be the base year,
Right.
and so there wouldn't be any actual funds accumulated during that base year. It wouldn't be until the following year, the fiscal year 19, where any funds would actually be due into the TIF.
Is January 1st a realistic goal to bring this project, this issue to a close?
It's possible.
It's
There's a
6
lot of-
months
There's a lot
plus
of public
the last
meetings
3
and
years.
workshops and things that have to
I think
occur
you've got
as
most
part
of
of
the
the
issues.
process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, without, unless you have some more discussions, if we could, we've got a motion, a substitute motion on the floor, which is to have staff bring this back as soon as possible to the county commission. Is there any public discussion to that motion? Come forward, please. Come forward, please. Introduce yourself. I like your,
My name's Naeem, again, for the record, Chad. I want to address you, Mr.
if you could address it through the chair. That's okay. Yep.
Your commissioners like to say, have you seen a map? Have you seen this? Well, I really wanted to ask did you see, when you were talking about the roads, did you see the website with all the lists of the roads? Because apparently you didn't know anything, or how to get to it, how fast to get to it, anything, but you were quick to talk about that. But yet you won't address this issue off the cuff, and you'd rather delay this.
Actually, I'm not trying to delay
Not you,
this.
sir. I'm not talking about.
And I'm also, with respect to the maps, when I looked on the county's website for maps, they were maps dated 2000. They're 16-year-old maps.
Right.
And you can't tell what's been done and what hasn't been done.
And what I'm referring to here is previously someone was saying how it was a great suggestion by one of the commissioners about having a city map just showing the list of the roads before someone buys, here's this road, and then someone decided to say, well, that exists. Well, does it? Have you seen it? Because you didn't tell us what website, what link, where to press, if it's easily accessible for other people that don't know what to press. But then all of a sudden, here's someone that's telling you, listen, this has been on here for 3 years, let's get this moving. And he wants to delay it because he hasn't seen a map. Just I just think it's like contradicting of a particular commissioner, not you, sir. Talking about someone else.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Anyone else from the citizen?
That was pretty.
In 1 minute, Commissioner
I'm
Barley.
still trying to get my mind around those comments. I'll wait until after citizen comments.
Mr. Shepard, go ahead.
I think this is a great idea to bring this to Newberry. I've seen the accomplishment of the CRA in Gainesville, in the city. I don't know that much about the county yet, but I'm learning. I'm a fast learner. And what I've seen with the CRA in Gainesville was blossomed like I'd say 4 days within, it seemed like when it was like 7 years, it seemed like it was 4 years, 4 days. And so I think it's a great opportunity to bring that to Newberry and help the community to take and have such things as paint programs, such as historical sites, upgrades for houses, and so on. So I don't know that much, so I'm not going to say much more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shepard. Anyone else from the public wish to speak to the motion? Okay, now back to the board. Commissioner comments, Commissioner Barley.
Just to address the concerns from the citizen, the list is available. It's been available for a decade. It's the county's website. We don't have anything else. We didn't mail it to you. Maybe if you asked, we'd mail it to you. But we do have the information. We've had it for a long, long time. A list of projects.
Hang on, sir.
I don't know, but I'm speaking now. So we do have the list available. It's available publicly. It's on our website. That was your concern. The map of the roads, the roads have not changed in a decade, and we don't need a map. The maps, I have a road map, a county road map that shows where the maps are. So the issue with the roads and who pays for maintenance was not related to the map. With the CRA, it's very much all about the map, because those are the areas within which the growth and development will happen. You have to know whether or not the increase in taxable value is going to be in a blighted area or in a field that's going to be a subdivision. It makes a huge difference. So to have an agreement about how maintenance will be done, it was for roads that we all know where they are, if you want to go look at them on the map. The CRA map is not available. We don't have it yet. So that's the difference between the two. I don't think those are inconsistent.
Thank you, Commissioner Barley. Any other commissioner comments? Okay, we'll first vote on the substitute motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries 4-1. Commissioner Hutchinson in dissent.
Okay, we have one more citizen comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm sorry. Since I live on 226, I took the drive today.
Is this about the motion that's on the table?
Well, kind of community redevelopment.
That passed, okay.
Vicki Golnay again. But I took the drive. When we moved to our road in 94, there was probably a dozen people on the road, 1 mile road. I took the drive parallel to 202, and that's 4.6 miles, and there's about the same number of people there, 36 mailboxes I counted, to approximately our 36. There's approximately 40 on each, but his road is 5 miles, where my road is 1 mile. So you're talking about community redevelopment. A map is not going to show you the lots that are filled in. You go drive out down our road and you'll see every lot is filled in with houses on both sides of the road, almost. There might be just 1 or 2 lots that are not occupied, not blighted, but his road is huge farms. The first mile from Newberry Road to 15 is 6 people. The next from 15 to 30, there's a dozen. From 30 to 46, there's another dozen. And from 46 to Highway 45, there's another 6. So that just tells you he has what he has on his lane, what we have on our lane. So that's community redevelopment.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. You just proved my point, is that I need to see the map and then drive the map. So thank you for those comments.
Okay, now Commissioner Coleman.
To the light side, Florida 3, LSU 0.
Attaboy. Yeah, we're talking.
Does my commission, we don't need to vote on anything on the CRA. We just need the county. I've just wanted, while we've had this exchange, I've been looking through my emails about the CRA. I don't see any email. I haven't had a chance to look through all of them, but I'm in that time frame. I don't see any email where we've indicated any desire to slow down the process. So, I'll certainly find out with my staff where that ball was dropped, but I'm not seeing where we have at any point said that we wanted to slow down or pause. So you guys get an update. hopefully we've set a clear January 1st as our marching orders to both staffs. Can I get a head nod from you guys to the staff that that's our goal? If we miss it by a month, not by another 3 years. And it's an up or down vote. We just bring this thing to a vote so that we can move on with life, because we all got other issues to deal with here. So we don't need to vote on anything about that issue. Is that correct? So we are ready to now move on to everyone's favorite topic, the Stormwater Manual update. Mr. New, you want to introduce whatever person is
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, I suggest that first we waive our rules of procedure and extend the meeting by 4 hours to discuss this issue. Actually, that's not true. Staff, we do not have anything. This was an opportunity for Alachua County staff to share where they are in the process. We discussed it pretty at length in our last meeting, and just invite Alachua County staff to kind of tell us what's happened in the last year and where they anticipate this going.
Thank you, Mr. New. Manager New. Mr. Olmos?
Good evening, Commissioners. Gus Olmos, Alachua County Environmental Protection Department. I don't have a presentation. I just have a very brief update of where we are with the proposed manual. Just to step back a little bit, as you may recall, this process got started back in January of last year. We released the first draft of the manual on May of 2016. We received a lot of public comments and we made changes, and a revised manual was released in November. Since then, we've been working on two specific studies we were requested to conduct. One is what we call the case studies, and the purpose of that study was to get a cost analysis of the implementation of the manual. That study was completed in March, and it's available on the website. And we're still finishing up the other study. And the second study is to look at the performance of the actual basins in the county. That's a soil column study, soil testing study that the University of Florida is doing, and that should be completed by next week. So once that report is completed, it'll be put on the website. We'll get the comments. We're going to take the month of July to kind of put all this together, and then the goal is to get back to the county commissioners with an update in their first meeting in August. And that's kind of like the brief update. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
That was impressive, sir. I appreciate your brevity.
Any questions, Commissioners, on our side?
I have one. Mr. Olmos, I know that we're also going through the land development regulations as well, and what our current practices are. Y'all are, as I understand it, y'all are doing an analysis of some of the practices that currently that we're doing, and what impact that might have as far as the percolation rate, and perhaps some of the things that we're currently doing has had a negative impact on the ability for the absorption to take place of nitrates and phosphorus. So we're doing more or less two things at once, are we not?
Correct. Those are two parallel processes. So we're doing the code, but at the same time we're looking at the existing LDRs and the infiltration rate on those things. And we're going to have an update on the code itself on August 8th, and we'll present what we have available on the other process at the same day.
Okay, the code, you're talking about, which code are you talking about? The LDRs?
The manual.
Okay,
so,
but that's just going to be an update, is that correct?
We will have the third draft available. We will have a draft code to implement the manual, and we will want to get direction from the board to see how they want to proceed.
Well, will our current practices be, the analysis of our current practices be done at that point in time as well? Because it seems like there should be an evaluation of both at the same time, because if one is having a negative impact on what we're currently doing, if we change that, and that has a positive effect on the amount of absorption of nitrates and phosphorus, that might have an impact on what we do as far as the stormwater.
I would say if the board wants us to put the manual on hold until everything else is completed, then I will take that direction on the meeting in August.
Well, I think, I'm not trying to ask anything be on hold, but I think it would be wise on our part to have, as many variables as possible, because this is going to have an impact. I haven't read the most recent study about the cost analysis, but I've heard something about the cost analysis, but if in fact, and what I've heard is that apparently what staff has been recommending is backfilling our basins 3 feet of sand, and which has had not much positive effect as far as its absorption value. So if the cost of doing that is X, and the cost of doing what the new stormwater regulations is Y, but they end up mitigating each other by just changing what we're doing, and so there's no net impact, because from what I understand, the impact of the stormwater, what's out there is going to have an impact on housing, how much housing is going to cost, and it's not going to be a positive effect. So I would hope, and I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel, I would hope that we would try to gather all the information that goes into this decision, not just kind of focus in on one specific area. Because if both are having an impact, why would we focus on just one when there might have an impact on both, from both?
I think I should be able to answer that question on the 8th. I mean, the filling with sand, the replacement with the material, yeah, there's a cost involved in that, so we can address that at the 8th, at your next meeting. No.
Well, what I want to know more than anything else is, will the analysis of the LDRs be complete to see what we're currently doing and how and what impact that potentially has on what we're doing as far as the stormwater manual.
Okay.
Commissioner Hutchinson?
So my question is the reason that putting sand in these basins beneficial is because we're building the basins too large to begin with, and we need less capacity, but we need more contact time?
No, the purpose of the sand, and it's not a county requirement, it's a requirement by the Water Management District. The purpose of putting essentially Archer sand, and it doesn't have to be Archer sand, it just happens to be the material that
we have lots of,
and it's readily available, and it does a good job. What you want to do in these car-sensitive areas is you want the water to move uniformly through the basin, because if you have selective pathways, then you may end up with sinkholes. So Archer sand is really good at that, plus it moves the water really fast. The drawback of Archer sand is it moves the water really fast, so it doesn't have time to remove the nitrogen.
Okay, so because one of the things that I understood in talking to some of the consultants involved was that we had started oversizing our basins, and as a result, the retention time wasn't long enough to do any denitrification. Is that part of what's going on?
No.
That we needed smaller basins with more contact time.
Usually the size of the basin is based on volume requirements, not so much on water quality requirements. So the oversizing of the basin was done to address volume issues, not water quality issues.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Anything else, commissioners?
My commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Coleman? Oh, Commissioner McGee first. It was.
I just had a question about the, you're talking about the sand. Is this in addition to the BAM material, or have you guys?
So the common practice is to use Archer sand, 3 feet of Archer sand, to put at the bottom of the basins. If these changes get adopted, it will be 2 feet of this BAM material and then 1 foot of Archer sand.
Okay.
Commissioner Coleman?
Right here shows what pork, this is a big old slab of pork. Some of the people in this county, a lot of people in this county says, you know what, it's double taxation. He referred twice to other governmental agencies that are over this. It's the biggest slab of pork is the Environmental Protection Agency for Alachua County. It's unbelievable. That's all I got to say.
Could you not make me so hungry with your comments next time?
No problem.
We're talking about pork over there, man.
It's crazy.
Any other commissioners have any questions, comments? Do you have a best case and worst case scenario? What's your best idea for how beneficial this will be, and what's your, what's the range of percentage that you're trying to get of nitrogen out of the soil by doing this?
So this is pretty much site specific. So we looked at 5 sites throughout the county. For one of the sites that we looked at, the site as built met the requirements. So I guess that would be your, I don't know if you mean that,
Your
but
best case scenario.
Right. For some of the sites, for the other side, the other extreme, it doubled the cost of the stormwater infrastructure. That being said, it only increased by 2% the total cost of the project. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
I'm not sure if you did either.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting answer.
Right. But let me try that. So
Okay.
basically, on the western part of the county, here's where we are. Here's where this band material gets discussed a lot. So right now, with the addition of this material and or other practices, we can get to a 70% reduction. While you're getting
70 or
70,
70?
70% reduction of total nitrogen. Currently, and this is to be verified by the soil column study I just mentioned, we're estimating you're getting 30%. So your best case scenario would be 40%.
Okay. And do you have an estimated impact on the cost of housing for doing this? How much is one house going to go up in Alachua County? What's your best case, worst case scenario there?
It really, and I'm not trying to be sneaky, but it really depends on the project, because the one thing that we were asked to is, and this was by the development community and the engineers, don't tell us what to do, just give us the goals and give us flexibility. So the cost per project, per housing, is going to depend a lot on how they get to that goal. There's a cheap way, there's an expensive way, and a more expensive way. So I could look at one of the case studies or all of the case studies and give you the cost for those projects, but it's hard to extrapolate that to a countywide number.
Well, I think 3 times you've said these things are site specific, and it depends. So I think when it comes to this issue, really all that we're asking is allow Newberry some home rule here, because we have site specific issues and we know best how to address those issues. So by your own definition of this issue, there's so many different variables. The west side of the county is completely different than the east side of the county. So I think that's pretty much our takeaway is, allow for that latitude so that in our type of sandy soil, we can address those needs in the best way we can. So Hawthorne can address those needs in the best way they can, instead of trying to create some sort of uniform county-wide, which you've just said in all 3 of your answers to me. They're all site specific. It all depends. So I guess I would ask you guys to just kind of consider that, because we all want good water. We all want clean water. That's not the issue to me. The issue is, how much is it going to cost that new family who's trying to get started in life, and how much are we achieving here out of it? Because I'm not sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck here, and trying to make something uniform across the board, it's not going to be effective in this situation.
And just to clarify,
all 3 answers you're going to clarify, or just one answer?
Just
okay.
one. It's a clarification. The code is not one size fits all.
Okay.
The requirements are different depending on where in the county you are.
Follow up to what the mayor said. I know that after we got the City of Newberry's resolution last year, we slowed everything down. We instructed staff to meet with each of the municipalities to look at their specific cities, their specific land development code, their future land use, to develop areas where they had concerns about redevelopment and or future development. Have we done that with the City of Newberry? And are those maps, we're talking a lot about maps today, are those maps with potential exclusions and or redevelopment areas planning to be in the manual or the code, or is that something that we're going to be discussing in August?
To the first question, yes, we met with all the municipalities and got their input. As you stated, one of their major concerns was redevelopment. Each city has their own definition of what redevelopment is. The short answer is no, we're not planning to have maps of excluded areas. We're going to have a functional definition of redevelopment. So it's going to be depending on what's being done as opposed to where it's being done. If the board wants to go the other way, then we can look at that option as well.
I think I do. I'll wait to hear from the commissioners. I think it's important that, I think I do want to have a functional map. I want to have specific exclusion areas. I want the cities to have input into that, and to the extent that there are areas that the cities know about that the county doesn't know about, I think it is site specific, and I'd like to hear your input. So This hasn't come to us yet. I haven't even seen a draft, but I'm giving you some of my thoughts so that if you have input to that, you can participate. Commissioner Barley?
Well, if we're going to discuss it, I guess we ought to discuss it. That's why it's on the agenda. I think that the map, there will be a map either way, but the map, I think, should flow from the definition rather than the definition following from the map. You decide what redevelopment is, what it means. You have a uniform approach. X percentage of the site, if it has an impervious surface, then it's redevelopment if you rebuild it, or however we're going to do it. Then you apply it to everyone. And what will follow from that is a map that anyone can generate for their own municipality. But I don't see how you can get to a map before you get to a definition of redevelopment. It seems pretty arbitrary.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, Commissioner Martin?
I would just elevate a few concerns that have been brought to me. Folks that have come to me view this as a very huge PR problem at the county level. Sort of what Commissioner Coleman was saying, it's coming across as just another tax by the county. And they don't see the value in that tax. I think, generally speaking, and I've said before, people don't mind paying a tax if they feel there's a value there. But they have no real belief that the additional money created by this is controlled by the elected officials, because it goes directly to your department of unelected officials. That's a problem, and that it doesn't address the problem, and it's more about control, which I agree. I think this is more about control than anything, because of it affecting growth, and I've listened to a couple of different comments and discussions and things like that, and you get a lot of that in this position. Sometimes you don't know what's right or wrong, but every discussion that I've heard never talks about or hasn't ever mentioned the farmer part of it. It is my understanding that is y'all's belief that the farmers are the highest contributors of nitrates, but how is this going to address any of that? Because it comes across as just adding a whole lot of scale expense and not really addressing the problem that it's being sold to try to address. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if I could answer some of those questions. So, first one, I believe you're mixing up the stormwater assessment fee with the stormwater manual, which is easy to do. Same title.
Is the tax not funding the implementation of the manual?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay, good.
So the assessment fee is to pay for maintenance of county roads, stormwater infrastructure, and to do cost sharing for water quality projects. So it's really not related to the manual at all.
That was previously funded through the gas tax?
Correct.
Okay.
So the relationship and how agriculture plays into this, the percent contribution of agriculture or stormwater or septic tanks, it really depends on where you are. So obviously within the city of Gainesville, agriculture is not a big player, but on the more rural areas it is. Why are we looking at stormwater and not at agriculture? Two reasons. One, we are preempted from regulating agriculture, and we are required to control the stormwater. So we really don't have a choice. I mean, we have a choice on what we do to meet those requirements, but we cannot just say we're going to ignore stormwater and expect agriculture to do their part. Everybody's supposed to do their part and look at their different contributions.
Is the idea of levying the stormwater tax and taking it out of the gas tax revenue freeing up more money in the gas tax bucket to actually do roads? Is it actually going to go towards the roads?
Yes. Yes.
You don't sound as confident as they do.
I'm not the roads guy. I'm the environmental guy, but yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
Do we have a confident road guy in Public Works that could confirm Commissioner Martin's question?
I think that speaks a little bit to the PR issue, because I don't think that it's been communicated effectively enough to really sell that idea. And it just kind of echoes back to, the county, citizen body wouldn't pass the road tax. So now we've got to free up more money in the road tax. I think you have made a point tonight with regards to, we have a huge backlog of $500 million. We're only generating 5.9 million or whatever that number was earlier. So there's a point that could potentially be made, but it's just this idea of tax over tax over tax, and it can't get achieved this way, and we have to split it. And I mean, it's like going to a restaurant and you get a bill, you get a receipt for the food, and then later on you're getting a bill for the service, and then you're getting another bill for the linen and the tablecloth. It doesn't sell publicly, and I think it's a huge problem for us. And I don't think that the citizen body in the western side of the county has the confidence in the county to actually dedicate that money to actually roads, because when we paid road tax before, we get a bike path, we get a roundabout, we get a bus cutout, and things like that, and a lot of things that don't really sell as transportation related. They sell as touchy-feely, Gainesville-friendly stuff when everybody's putting into the pot.
Mr. Harriet?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, Jim Harriet, Deputy County Manager over the infrastructure side of the county's operations. Right now, the gas tax funds about $300,000 a year towards stormwater type of work. And you heard Mr. Gavaretti earlier talk about all the rains that we've had, the daily rains, which I remember as typical Florida rains from years ago. Every afternoon you're getting another couple of inches. How his crews are inundated with work coming off of that rain. That's not the way it should be in this county because of funding only $300,000 a year towards stormwater infrastructure. Some of the infrastructure is in disrepair. If you look back 20 years ago and you saw corrugated metal pipes going in, within the next few years you're going to see corrugated metal pipes failing. Those things all need to be fixed and repaired. Right now the only funding source for that is gas tax. This funding source will augment that a little bit. There will also be funding added for water quality projects. Mr. Olmos talked about reducing nutrient loads and such. There are many projects around the county to improve water and water quality before it enters our drinking system or moves on down the streams. That's also part of the funding. In terms of the fear of spending money, gas tax is gas tax. You can only spend gas tax money on roads. You can spend it sometimes on capital, sometimes you can spend it on maintenance, sometimes you can spend it on both, but it only goes to roads and any ancillary part of the road. It can't be moved to parks, it can't be moved to buy environmental lands. Likewise, this stormwater assessment, if it passes and moves through, can only be spent on stormwater infrastructure and stormwater improvements. It can't be spent on natural lands, it can't buy natural lands, it can only be spent on stormwater improvements. I also can't pave roads with the stormwater assessment, so it's very limited. We refer to it kind of jokingly as color of money, and we watch it very carefully. Worked in a couple of counties where you have these taxes and the different funding sources, and you have to watch it very, very closely. So hopefully that alleviates the concern of where the money's going when it comes out. And the Board of County Commissioners through the budget process will see that on an annual basis.
And Mr. Harriet, how much of the stormwater assessment will the citizens of the incorporated city of Newberry pay? In the city?
Zero in the cities.
Can you repeat that number?
It's zero in the cities.
Thank you.
Just have to help those folks who live inside Newberry but are unincorporated understand that they're an unincorporated part, not in city part. Are both boards?
But they don't. Mr. Mayor, to that point, they don't elect this commission.
Correct.
Thank you.
It's one thing I always like to tell people, all of my residents are your constituents, but not all of my residents are my constituents. So sometimes there's an education process in pointing people to who they need to be talking to. But my final comment on this was one that Commissioner Martin brought up. I teach a class called Human Geography, which is all about the world, what the world is doing, and the countries that are successfully attacking this problem are doing it through agriculture. And what I love about those countries is that they're not doing it through government regulation with agriculture. They're helping farmers establish best management practices. They're educating farmers. You know, that's the way you work with people and get real accomplishment made instead of always trying to legislate and legislate and legislate. I think I'm a farmer. Farmers care about their land more than anybody else does. If I mess up my fertilizer, that costs me money and it hurt my property. So if I could have somebody come in and help me not make that mistake, and I understand that you guys legislatively can't regulate farmers, which I'm glad about personally, but but that's not to say that you couldn't take part of that EPA budget and help institute those kinds of programs to work with farmers. And I think you would get a much better bang for your buck. I think you'd address some of the PR issues. I think you would get the environmental concerns addressed, and I just think it'd be a better approach. But that's y'all's decision, and it's the kinds of things that you guys need to think about. Are we ready for citizen comments? Any more questions, comments? All right, citizen comments on the storm water.
By the way, there's a whole blog on the City of Newberry forum right now of everything that's been, in my opinion, and not of the cities, by the way. My name's Naeem Richad, once again. So, Mr. Gus Olson, thank you. I had a concern similar to, I agree with one of the commissioners, Tim Martin, taxing and double dipping on taxes. Kind of like a sales tax on a car. You buy a car, you pay the taxes, and you sell the car, and that person pays taxes again on the same vehicle you just paid taxes on a year before. So it's like double dipping, double dipping, double dipping. Yet, we're hearing from one side of the spectrum that we don't know how expensive this can get. And then we're hearing that the tax is zero. So which one is it? Is it going to be zero, or is it going to be tax? And if it is tax or an assessment is done, is there a cap at where it stops? Because at this moment, it doesn't sound like there's going to be a cap. It can go up to 100, 150, 200 bucks. When does it stop? I find it funny because I've done my research on this stormwater on my own. I'm just another university college student here. But UF Agriculture talks about rainwater and collecting it as a rain barrel. And you made an exceptional comment on that, Mayor Mark. Teaching the citizens, teaching the farmers, collecting the rainwater, how to use it properly, how to use what comes from the earth and what comes from the sky, etc., instead of just legislating. That's on the UF Agriculture's website right now. How to help this stormwater issue without going with the easy, let's just add another tax to the citizen. They'll pay for it. Oh well. If not, we'll put a lien on their house and their house is ours.
You got 30 seconds. Oh,
no, that
wonderful
was
conclusion. Look at that timing. Good job,
yeah,
sir.
that was it. I just wanted to stop with the easy way out. So let's teach the citizens how to do it right so we can have the longevity of it instead of just a short solution for the temporary problem.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments?
My name's Donald Shepard, and I'm the people's representative as of now. And I say that this should they can be moved forward. That we produce an FFA, a Future Farmers of America. Up where I'm from, we have that. We have support of the farmers. It's called FFA, and the gentlemen that wear these blue coats with a badge on it, emblem on it, that said FFA, is diminishing. So if we can get our colleges here in Florida to support this and to bring this back to America, let's do it. Because this is a need to teach and educate our young generation to how to save their country. And this stuff they call BAM or FAM, I took and seen some of that sample stuff. What is it? Sand, rubbers, and sulfur. Do we really want that? And you're going to pay $40 for a baggie full times 200,000 miles? No, that's way over any budget that the county or the city of Newberry and High Springs wrapped together. So when, Mr.
30 seconds, sir.
When the gentleman takes and brings this proposal for this stuff to be put into your ground, it's wasteful. There has not been a survey proving that that works. Until they do, I'm not voting for that to be put into ground and making our taxpayers pay for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And just so everybody knows, we have a very robust FFA program here in the city of Newberry. They're great kids. Any other citizen comments? Make sure you say your name, Mr. Boyer.
Walt Boyer. We spoke a lot tonight about roads and taxes. As we all know, Alachua County is the highest taxed county in Florida. And I publicly applaud Commissioner Chestnut for voting against the stormwater fee. Thank you. I want to talk a moment about priorities or lack of. As Commissioner Martin mentioned, most gas tax monies have been spent on projects other than roads. I understand some of it is allocated to structure. But that also includes funding RTS. Now, you couldn't get a separate road tax, so you vote in an assessment to help pay for the roads. But while at the same time, you're spending almost $1.5 million of county taxpayer money to buy a YMCA. We as county citizens recognize this as a lack of priority. Our roads and our infrastructure should be a priority. And we ask as an elected board that you consider what your priorities are when you're determining your budgets. Make our roads a priority. I mean, it's important. Take your focus away from sole focus away from Gainesville. Look at the municipalities outside of Gainesville. Show us some love. Take care of us. In all the years that I've been addressing the county commission, it's never seemed to resonate, regardless of the members that have been sitting behind the dais.
30 seconds, sir.
So I ask that you put a priority on roads as part of your core responsibilities, using the monies that our county taxpayers provide for you without dipping into our wallet every chance you get. Besides for that, I would highly recommend that our county citizens look into and understanding what single member districts are, because I believe that might help take care of a lot of the problems we on the outside of Gainesville are experiencing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other citizen comments? You get one time per item, so.
Well, I wrote them all down, so I won't forget. Vicki Gaulnay. Question. The EPA. I don't understand this even when I see it on television. News report, local news report, got 0.86 inches of rain today. Well, I measured 9 inches in 2 days. So do they take reportings here, over in the airport, over at Noonan's Lake, 6 different places around the county, or do they just use one? So that's really a misnomer of what's accurate in rainfall. Because, boy, it's really different. Some places don't get any, others get a lot. And then also, talking about farming, I don't know where the EPA comes into play here, but the Canadian billionaire who came down and has bought out all this hunting property out here near Bronson to run his cattle, and now he's getting all the millions of gallons of water from Silver Springs. Who's controlling that? The EPA, somebody's getting something. And then, too, Newberry, I don't know how far it goes, but we had a friend that used to live across from West End Golf Course, and his address was Newberry. Don't know why. But is Jonesville part of Newberry? The reason I say that, now this might be a urban legend, but we had first refusal from Tommy Farnsworth to buy where Publix is now. And supposedly there's a cavern under there that has albino, blind, white, freshwater shrimp that are very rare.
30 seconds.
And that's an EPA thing. Well, guess what? We didn't have deep enough pockets, so we refused because we knew we could never develop it. But somebody had deep enough pockets to develop that, and where's the EPA there? I mean, somebody ought to know that, unless that is truly an urban legend. So those are the comments. And as far as property taxes, and about tax dollars, just like parks, I don't know, maybe some of that money's going towards Brazilian butt lifts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Maybe some
That's
of
a
our
good
tax
place to
dollars are
end
not
right
being
there.
well spent.
Thank you.
Mayor, I want to know, can we eat the shrimp? Are they freshwater shrimp? I bet they're pretty good.
All right. Any other citizen comments? Hearing none, we will move on to commission general and informal discussion. Certainly invite our
Commissioners.
guests here.
Commissioner Briley.
While we're here, can we get an update on the negotiations with the sheriff?
Sure. Would y'all like me to take that, or Mr. New as the negotiator? I'll just go ahead, Mr. New. Why don't you give the update on the negotiation? They are ongoing, so I don't know how much we want to give away our secrets. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can get some secrets
Yeah.
feedback. We've met with the sheriff on a number of occasions. The sheriff's requested compensation for the services she provides in Newberry is about 16% above what we are paying this year, and she's not offered any she's not offered any evidence that she's increasing the level of service. So from Newberry's perspective, our position has been if 16% is a little rich for our blood with no increased level of service, and we've countered with something that we offer all the other contractors that service us, whether it's Blue Cross Blue Shield and healthcare, or the folks that sell us fuel, or the folks that sell us office supplies. We're rarely in a position to increase what we pay those companies by 16% without justification or without an increased level in service. So that we're still a little bit apart on what we think is the value of that service.
Commissioner Briley.
Memory serves, the sheriff represented to the Board of County Commissioners that she was asking the city to pay the law enforcement MSTU, which is the same rate that everyone else in the county who gets services from the sheriff pays. Is that what she's asking you to pay?
The basis of the sheriff's position for what she's requesting is the value calculated of our property values if we had remained in the MSTU. And that the sheriff's perspective is that is the basis or the essence of our agreement. The city's position, and the city's position is that is not at all what we agreed to. That is my understanding why our commission directed us to begin negotiating law enforcement contract to begin with. We want our law enforcement services to be based on the level of service provided to our residents, in and apart from the property values in Newberry. It's the same officers, and we don't see how changing property values would impact the cost for that service. We think that the cost is what the cost is.
And I would reiterate that from a unanimous, rock-solid memory of 20 minutes before the vote, we were very, very clear with the sheriff that the contract price that we would negotiate would, once we were out of the MSTU, would not have anything to do with the MSTU. It would be based on a cost of service that we all believe that any bookkeeper should be able to identify. I know exactly how many deputies are in Newberry. I know that, and I think Newberry pays more than our fair share. We pay the full freight of the SROs, and we only get them 180 days out of the year. So, and 50% of our students in our schools are Archer students, which are part of the MSCU. So we think we've been very generous in paying our fair share, right along the same lines of wanting to pay for the ambulance bay, wanting to pay for other things. We think we are right there on the number. Just 12 months ago, she stared all of these people right in the eye and said, "You're getting X amount of service, and this is what it cost me to serve Newberry." And I promise you that's what it costs, and we didn't quite agree on the price back then. And I think it's a 19% increase is what she's asking for this year, not a 16% increase. So
That's
our memory is
740 to 856.
856.
I'm not privy to that presentation or that discussion. I just know that in the MSTU, the services, we set the budget and we collect the money by setting an appropriate millage rate to raise the necessary revenue. What I sort of hear you saying is you want to carve out a place within that area and have a separate rate and a separate agreement that is not the same as the people right across the city line are paying for the same service.
No, I would say that no, sir. I would say that what the city of Newberry is saying is that I don't represent the other cities. So if the other cities are not being treated fairly, that's the other city's elected body's job. My job is to make sure that my citizens are being treated fairly. And if it cost the sheriff $740,000 last year to provide those SROs, and she can't offer any reason for a 19% increase this year, then whether or not she's mistreating other municipalities is not necessarily I don't have any power over that.
Is the millage rate that she's specifying based upon her requested budget, her certified requested budget? Because as you may be aware, the county commission is not on a track to come anywhere close to funding that budget.
I'd have to defer. I'm not sure. Asking me how the sheriff comes up with her budget is a mystery to me. So.
No, sir. The information that she's provided to us is there is one full-time deputy in the city of Newberry, and actually in the Foxtrot zone, which is roughly twice the size of Newberry. It's 3 SROs, 4 school crossing guards, and communication service.
No, what I'm asking is the MSTU rate that you are claiming is an increase over last year of X percentage. Is that MSTU rate the one that would be necessary to bring in her proposed, requested, certified budget? Because we're in current budget deliberations right now, just as you are. Or is it the one that the board is on a trajectory to approve? Which we haven't specified yet, so I guess maybe you could.
No, it is to my understanding, the way it's explained to me, it doesn't have anything to do with her proposed budget or certified budget to the county commission. It is simply, here is last year's, here's the proposed MSTU rate, here's your property values, I multiply them, I discount them by 5% because we always budget for 95%, not 100%, and that number equals 856, and that's what we've agreed to.
Does, question for county staff, does this discussion with the MSTU include what we are proposing to do with the law enforcement MSTU, increasing it by decreasing the communication services tax, the public safety tax, to raise the revenue? Those will go down or move into a different category of government. Therefore,
Welcome, Mr.
increasing
Niblack.
law enforcement MSTU.
Thought you were going to get out of here without even having to say a word tonight.
Mr. Manager?
Good evening, Mayor, Mr. Chair. We're going to have to take a vote because we have a board meeting in 11 hours. I'd ask the county attorney to keep me from standing up and talking on this issue, but the response is, and Mike and I and a few of my staff had a meal before we came over here tonight, and as I recall, the sheriff's asking for, I think, $856. The $740 you paid last year didn't cover your full cost because, quite frankly, she's got a lot of staff back there that are in a lot of different specialties that support the sheriff's operation. So I can understand you want to do it a la carte, but you got to pay to keep the lights on too, so to speak, so there's overhead. We're going to the county board of county commissioners currently. It's going to the rollback rate in the general fund, and eliminating the non-countywide MSTU and reflecting a more transparent cost of the sheriff's budget and the law enforcement MSTU, which means that the millage rate to support the sheriff's budget, the law enforcement budget, has to go up. Your true cost, if you were to not be subsidized by the other areas of the county, would be $1.3 million, so the $856 is a bargain. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
We've got the same speech from the sheriff, but we just can't quite get the numbers to actually back that up. When we go into the numbers, they don't bear that spiel out. And again, it's just difficult because last year the sheriff looked at all of us in the eye and she said, you are getting $746,000 worth of service for $740,000. You're getting a deal. And this year she's saying you're getting, her number is, because I just finished this, her number was just slightly over 1 million. Well, I'm asking for 856, you're getting a deal. Mr. Niblock's number is 1.3 million. So we got all of these numbers, but the sheriff 12 months ago stared at all of us and said, you're getting $746,000 of service. That's how much it costs me to serve the city of Newberry. You're getting a deal. Now here we are 12 months later, and you're getting over $1 million or $1.3 million in service. We're asking you for 856. You're getting a deal. At some point, it's just hard to parse this out.
There, if I may, there's no reason why you all would know about the shifts that the manager was just talking about, because it's not your business. Are you familiar with them? Have you been in communication with the county staff, Mr. Manager? Do you know about our proposal to increase the law enforcement MSTU by decreasing the unincorporated MSTU, eliminating it actually, and moving the money around so as to have a more, as the manager said, transparent funding source for law enforcement, so you would see an increase in one place with a corresponding increase in others if you're in the unincorporated area?
Which Commissioner Barley, in the city of Newberry, they pay the general fund, so they would get a reduction if we do the rollback rate, but they're not in the MSTU. That's contracted, to your point. Just for the citizens out there, I just wanted to clarify what he just said.
And in response to your question, Commissioner Barley, your county finance director reached out to me briefly and said this was the discussion that went on, and in a 5-minute conversation gave me the big broad overview. There's been no very detailed information, and that was a couple, 3-4 days ago. So it's we are not aware of the total ramifications of what the county commission is considering.
And if there's any last-minute still confused about whether or not Newberry was supposed to just always pay whatever the MSTU rate was, I would just simply point you to the contract. Because if that was supposed to be the deal, certainly it would have been written into the contract.
Well, if you're getting the same level of service or greater than the people in the MSTU are getting, then you're asking the people in the unincorporated area to subsidize Newberry. Is that the plan?
No, sir. Again, I don't represent the people in the unincorporated territory, so I only represent my citizens. So I can only look at my citizens and say, this is the level of service that you're getting, and this is the cost for that service. You're asking me to take considerations that are beyond my control. So, we've done the best job we can of working with the sheriff's office to figure out her numbers and figure out how much it's actually costing her. And we are willing to pay our cost of service. That is not the question here. The question is, you're asking for a 19% increase, and you can't justify. The only justification is, well, the MSTU went up, and so everyone else is paying that. But my cost of service that my residents are paying is relatively the same, and as a representative of my residents, that's where I have to have my focus. If you feel like the unincorporated is paying too much, I would certainly invite you to take that issue up with the sheriff.
And believe me, we did.
Yeah. so I see us as brothers in arms here, because I listen to y'all's conversations with the sheriff, and they pretty much go the way our conversations with the sheriff go. So I hope that there's some level of sympathy on your behalf for us, because we have the same kind of issue going on of we're saying that this is the cost of service. To just show me the numbers and how we got a 19% increase in 1 year, and I believe this board would pay it. If you could prove the numbers and make us believe that that's the cost of service, we're willing to pay for what we get.
We are changing the MSTU formula this year because of the way we're moving some other taxes around, which is one of the things that enables us to roll back the general fund. So.
Well, I'm going to respond to Commissioner Marlowe after Commissioner Barley, or Mayor Marlowe. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, Mayor Marlowe.
I've heard you say several times that you believe that the MSTU rate that you're being asked to pay is out of whack somehow with the service being provided. which I'm having a little trouble understanding, because the sheriff does her thing. She has all the functions that she has in the patrol protection. She provides law enforcement services in all those areas that are part of her jurisdiction, and it costs X amount. And we raise that amount every year through the MSTU, and it gets spent. And they do it again next year. So the money that she's talking about is raised, and it is spent providing law enforcement. So I'm not sure where the perceived gap is. We spend all the money we collect from the MSTU on law enforcement. We provide a relatively uniform level of service. Obviously, more populated areas get a higher level of service. That's kind of the way it works. So the cost is what the cost is. And the sheriff's budget, once we adopt it, in order to pay for that budget, we set a millage rate, and then everyone pays that. We argue with the sheriff about the size of the budget, obviously. But you could pick out any sector of the county, I guess, any sector, and analyze it as to how it compares with all the rest of the county, and try and tease apart the 0.79% of a deputy he's here 46% of the time, and how does that compare with the rest of the county? And as the manager said, the cost to keep the lights on back at the sheriff's office, and all those things that
Which
go
we
into the
factored
budget.
in, by the way. So to respond to that, I would just say I think the reasoning is skewed when we look at 3 SRO officers and we pay their salary, their retirement, their training in the summer. We pay for a lot of we pay for their training downtown. We pay for the equipment that they use. We pay for children that live in Archer that come to school here. Then you just add those things up, and you say these are all of the services that we're getting. I know exactly how much the crossing guard car costs. I tally that in. So to me, you're working from the MSTU backwards. I'm working from the service that I'm getting forwards and tallying things up. So this is how much it costs. So to me, that to tie a service to a property value rate makes no logical sense, because property values go up and down, but the cost of that deputy stays the same, or just slightly increases every single year. So I guarantee you, if the bottom had fallen out of the city of Newberry and the MSTU rate had gone down to $400,000, she would not be negotiating with us saying, well, the MSTU would have generated $400,000, so I'll offer you $400,000. She would have still said, wait a minute, my cost of service is $746,000, just like it was last year. It's gone up. I need $760,000 this year. Just because the MSTU went down, I can't cut you a $400,000 deal. So and this is the primary problem with the MSTU and why this board opted out of it, trying to figure out a cost of service linked to a property tax is a conundrum. It just doesn't make any sense. So you're asking us to begin with the MSTU and say, well, that's what everybody else is paying, and that's what it costs the service. But when we add up those costs of services, they don't add up to that. So I think the problem that you're having is still the problem with the sheriffs, that the numbers that she's giving you don't add up to her actual cost of service. So she's asking for a higher MSTU rate. For what reason, I know not. I just know what it cost by the sheriff's own word last year. That's what I'm going off of, and there's no change in level of service this year, but a 19% increase in cost.
So it only leaves two possibilities. One, either your math is wrong, which I'm sure is not the case, or the money's just going down a hole in the ground somewhere.
I would never venture to guess. But I'll leave it to your own. You can answer that question for yourself, sir. All I know is that we have tallied up on a very generous schedule. If I look at an SRO that I get for 180 days a year, and my residents are willing to pay that officer's entire salary, retirement, benefits, training, that's the keeping the lights on. That Mr. Nitt, we're paying the entire thing. We're paying 50% of Archer, which is in the MSTU.
I guess part of what I'm not understanding is you keep defining it as there's an X number of FTEs or officers that you believe you're paying for.
According to the sheriff, that's exactly.
I don't get that, because the way it's done everywhere else, well, that's because of the contract. That's the complicating variable.
Right.
When you do the MSTU, it's impossible to calculate that. I live in Micanopy, which doesn't pay anything, by the way. They don't pay anything into the law enforcement MSTU, which I'm not happy about. I actually live in the unincorporated area now. There's no way that the people who live south of Micanopy could do a calculation that says our service level is 0.39 deputies, and that's what we ought to be paying. So I don't understand how you're doing that. you can define in your contract, we want to pay for one deputy. And then you can work backwards and have a price. The sheriff's point of view is, and my point of view, is that the law enforcement presence community-wide, which we provide to everyone as fairly as we can, costs this amount, and then we divide it by the number of population and come up with the cost. So maybe that's where maybe it's why you're not.
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Byerly just said that he and the sheriff agree on something.
I don't remember saying that.
I think we
say that.
can
You
leave
did
it
say
as
that.
we simply disagree on how you get to this number. But in our contract, we have one deputy allocated to the Foxtrot zone. We have an SRO in each school. We have 4 crossing guards.
So what happens when 3 deputies show up in Newberry in response to a crisis? Well, see, that's the problem.
Right.
Let's get through
Commissioner
commission
Martin.
comments.
The county is still taxing our residents through the regular general fund. So what we are speaking to is the enhanced level of service that we are paying for above and beyond the general fund. Does that make any difference?
The reason that goes part
So
of the way,
we're getting-
everyone pays something through general fund.
Correct.
And they pay for certain things.
Correct.
They pay for a fraction, a negotiated fraction of patrol and law enforcement. The rest of it is the part that Newberry and 2 of your sister cities are not paying. The other 2 aren't doing anything. You have a contract, and you negotiate on the basis of that contract. And I think I understand now why you're coming up with different numbers than what the sheriff's saying, because you're negotiating for a defined service level in a contract. But that's not what you get. That's not the service you get. You get the same service as everyone else, no matter what your contract says. And if there's a crisis here, you're not going to get one deputy. You're going to get everybody. They're all going to do so you get the same service
Just like
level
with
as everyone else.
the SROs go home for the summer, we continue to pay. So I understand your point
I
that.
didn't even know the sheriff was still in the SRO business.
Yeah. So I think I understand
Newberry
your
alone,
point
you
is.
know, Newberry alone.
I understand your point is that there's probably no way to come to a perfectly fair system here. I don't think my residents should pay for students in the schools that are part of Archer that are in the MSTU. So I think we have been overly generous with our numbers to address what the county manager said about keeping the lights on. I think we can back that up. In the interest of time, I would say I believe that the city of Newberry is going to negotiate a deal that we believe is fair, and we're going to pay our fair share as the way that our residents and commission define fair. And we may not end up agreeing with that, but we will pay for a service that we use.
Please do bear in mind when you're talking with the residents of Archer that they pay the MSTU, so they're paying more than your residents.
Thank you, Commissioner Riley. Okay, so let's get through commission comments so that we can
And
let
then
them
we'll
get
open it
through
up to
commission
you.
comments.
I know you got a lot to
Commissioner
hold that
Chestnut,
in.
do you
We'll
have
get it
anything?
all the way through.
Anything, Commissioner Chestnut? Okay, Commissioner Hutchinson?
Yeah, I just want to ask the attorney if if a city such as Newberry negotiates a lower price for sheriff's services than the county negotiated, what is why wouldn't, first of all the cities do that? And how would we handle dealing with the sheriff in that situation? Because let's say the sheriff agrees to a price that's lower than it's costing us to provide it. What's the equitable solution that the county commission has?
Counselor?
Well, Mr. Chair, that's quite a big question there. A few things, Michelle Lieberman, Alachua County Attorney, to point out. When the negotiation process started with Newberry, we requested to be a signatory to the agreement for 2 reasons. One, the sheriff has no ability to obtain revenue, so all of the revenue that the city of Newberry provides goes into our monies, and then we use it to fund the sheriff. And so there was no guarantee, frankly, that we had to use Newberry's money to even pay the sheriff. The sheriff has to provide it to us, and we can do what we wish with it ultimately, because we're not part of that agreement. The second thing is to remind the board that we are currently seeking answers through the circuit court, and one of those things that we are seeking answers on is requirements to separately account for all expenditures, not just in the MSTU, but the requirement to comply with the Uniform Accounting Systems Manual, which requires that all local governments, including the sheriff by statute and by definitions in the statute, that they separately account for all expenditures within the municipalities, within the incorporated and the unincorporated areas. To our knowledge, she is currently not maintaining her accounting, but to separately account for expenditures in municipalities in the incorporated versus unincorporated area. If those expenditures were in fact broken out, this would be a much easier conversation for everybody in the room, but that is one of the issues that we are trying to get to through our requests in circuit court, because we too would like, from the county's budgeting perspective, to have those exact numbers as well. You know, I can't really say what a response is. I mean, we ultimately give the bottom line budget amount, and the sheriff's office is required to provide whatever services she chooses to provide within those budgetary amounts.
Further comments, Commissioner Hutchinson? Okay, Commissioner Pinkerton, any comments? Okay, Commissioners, I just want to tell you thank you for this meeting. Originally, we did not have a meeting scheduled. I think it's a lot got covered tonight. When I look at the list and I think about Champions Park, it's a great partnership. When I look at fire services, I appreciate the City of Newberry's fire department, because they often are in the unincorporated area and they provide a great service to their citizens. The CRA, I'm hopeful we'll get there. I appreciate the comments and what you changes that you've made in response to last year and ongoing discussions. Transportation, I think we have an opportunity to do something great here, which is if it's a road inside the city, you take responsibility. That would set a precedence in this county, and I think it's a great opportunity, so thank you for proffering that policy. With the stormwater assessment, I just want to reiterate that the citizens of Newberry do not pay that. Okay, do not pay the stormwater assessment. I just want to make sure everybody understands that, because if there was a bad job of the county communicating that, then we'll take responsibility for that. But now hopefully you've heard that you can communicate that when you get that question. With regards to the sheriff, you know, I wish you were here, because this really is an agreement between you and the sheriff. And the last couple of years, you asked us what we thought about that, and I think I sat here and I said, you know, if you guys can come up with an agreement, and I think you will come up with an agreement. You know, the costs have gone up because the retirement has gone up. Raises have gone up. The cost to provide public safety has gone up. Health insurance was 27%. I appreciate the sheriff being here at our meeting today, and so I'm here to defend both you and the sheriff and y'all's ability to work together. Ultimately, you know, I think that's something that hopefully you two can work out, and I think you will. What I would ask that you consider when you're talking about the sheriff's budget is you will consider that this county commission is talking about and hopefully has consensus to move back for the first time since '95, other than when the state told us to in 2007, for the first time to move back to the rollback rate. That hasn't been done by any commissioner up here unless Tallahassee told them once in 2007. 1995. The citizens of Newberry will receive a benefit to that because everybody pays the general fund, millage. So when you're thinking about talking to the sheriff and you're thinking about what the county is attempting to do for the citizens of Newberry, because we represent them as well, and I think about them a lot as well, that's what we're attempting to do. We're attempting to provide a reduction in the general millage, which everybody pays, and that's significant. So thank you for having us here and for this dialogue.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman, do you have any comments?
I just, the only comment I got is if the petition, the right amount of people have signs a petition for single member districts, and I'm looking at all 5 of you, are you gonna go that way?
you gather the petitions, you don't need our approval.
Huh?
If you gather the petitions, you don't need our approval.
Okay. Automatically? Okay.
Any other comments, Commissioner Coleman?
And the other thing is the comment I made about pork is the whole Alachua County EPA group. That needs to be disbanded. That's all I got.
Commissioner McGehee? Commissioner Farnsworth? You just have one chance to talk tonight.
Yeah, save it for last.
Yeah.
Now, I appreciate all you guys coming here, and it's been very educational, and hopefully we can continue to work together and make improvements, not just for the citizens of Newberry, but for the county in general. And if you do ride with Commissioner Coleman, I suggest you drive. And that is all I have.
Commissioner Martin?
No, I appreciate everybody's time coming out tonight. It's good to see a lot of new faces here in the audience. So we had a groundbreaking for the new fire station not too long ago. I believe the two of you were there. So hopefully at the ribbon cutting we can get the rest of you out there. Thanks a lot.
Commissioner Glanzer?
Thank you. It's nice to be here, and thank you all for coming out to Newberry, every one of you. It's good to see you, and this is my first time here, so I learned a lot. It was a good, really good conversation, and made a lot of progress. Thank you.
I agree. I'll reiterate the gratitude to everybody, the county staff for sitting here. I know it's getting late in the evening. I look forward to working on the things we can work together on. I think we've made some groundbreaking policies here. I think that you're going to use Newberry as an example when you go to the other, and that's exactly what we like to be. So on the things that we're still struggle on, I'm sure that we'll get there. As we always do, I tell all my students, it always works out in the end. It just has a way of doing that, one way or another. So at that point, I'd like to open up to citizen comments. I know there were a lot of folks back in the ASO part. Maybe you've looked at the clock and you've decided against making those comments, but I would invite you now to do so. Here.
Vicki Galday, just to tell you, there's a whole new regiment of property owners that have inherited or whatever they've gotten from their grandparents or parents. I know of several properties that probably are agriculturally rated, but they shouldn't be. They don't have a cow on them. That's all this land just sitting there pristine, living in grandma's house. Life is good. There's a blueberry farm close to Alachua. They've taken out all their blueberries. Used to be a blueberry farm. Don't have a single blueberry anymore, but I'll bet you they got the agriculture exemption. So maybe it's time to address that. Maybe it's time for the property appraiser to take a look-see. There's a guy down our block that has 9 calves that are there 4 months out of the year, and then they disappear for the property exemption. It just kind of irks me because I don't have any property exemptions, and I pay $5,000 a year for 6 acres. I bet you don't pay that much for however many you have.
I don't even want to think about it. Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Coleman.
This is directed to, I forgot her name. Ed Crapo this year has decided that he is taking a major initiative on parcel by parcel that has ag exemptions, anything especially that's in the what we call the 5-year solid work. And in the last 2 weeks, there's close to 45 ag parcels that have been that are being taken off of ag. And I'm working as fast as I can. If you're not a true commercial agricultural operation, you're gonna be dropped. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Yes, sir. One last time, read it for the record.
That's it. My name's Naeem, last name Orchad. I really want to just take a moment and thank all the commissioners. Thank you to the county for being here, county staff, our city staff, the officers working the door right now, and the firefighters that came in earlier. Thank you for your service and your efforts. Truly, thank you. The last comment I wanted to make was, and I didn't have a chance to, was on the whole sheriff ordeal. I'm not going to get into great detail and fight it. However, I'm going to quote what Commissioner Tim Martin said recently, was if you're going to tax us or charge us for something and not provide the exact details of what we're paying for and we feel that there's a discrepancy, we're not going to want to pay for it. I come from a line of sheriffs and directors of police departments down in Miami, Broward County, and I still have my connections there. And every single sheriff and director that I spoke to said what she is doing is absolutely ridiculously wrong. These are opinions. These are not actual documented statements. There's not a map you can look at for this. However, I want to state that these men and women do put their lives on the lines for us. I respect it. I appreciate it day in and day out, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart for what they do. I couldn't do it. Call me a coward, whatever you want, but they have a bigger heart than I do on that. And they deserve the pay they get. However, when you're cutting the sheriff's budget and then she turns and charges the city more to offset it, it's wrong. It's flat out wrong. And if you would give us a breakdown dollar for dollar and show this, maybe we'll have a different feel for what we're paying for. But when we have cities paying zero on MSTU and then claiming that we're getting a deal, but we're paying $700,000, now $800,000, that's not a deal. Because if that's a deal to you, man, I would love to be your realtor.
Thank you, sir. Any other citizen comments tonight? Come on down. Oh, you got the paper, Ms. Bowser. Okay.
This is just from tonight. Bonnie Hauser. I had a couple of questions from earlier. Commissioner Cornell, I think you had said that the 2 road projects that had been started, those would be completed. But I was kind of confused when then you said that y'all were going to go back and rediscuss that it was a 2-2 tie, and now are you not wanting them to finish it? I just was a little confused.
The current direction is that those 2 roads will be chip sealed. So barring a change in the current direction, that's what's going to happen.
What could change that current direction?
3 votes.
So you saying tonight that it would be done, that could possibly not be the case? Okay.
To cut to the chase, I believe I'm the only commissioner who believes that it is not the appropriate action to chip seal those 2 roads.
Well, shouldn't you have thought about that before it all came up?
I've been thinking about it for a long time.
Yes, yeah.
He did admit he made a mistake.
So. Well, and that's fine to admit you made a mistake, but when you're not the one that's going to get the short end of the stick from the mistake, it's a lot easier to just go back and fix the mistake. The second thing is more to our commission. I heard this great thing about Champions Park today and how wonderful it is, and I think it is. I think it's doing great. I know Mike Spina has been a big part of that, and he is one man. So how does he run it so well? One man. And we have an entire recreation department that is still run shoddily.
I think it's his wife.
I will keep, well, whatever it is, maybe we should talk to him about what to do. This is not the first time I've brought it up. It will not be the last. If someone doesn't speak up for our kids, I'm just ashamed of how our rec department is run for the budget, the facilities, and the manpower that is already allocated out there. We should be the most streamlined rec department in the county and the surrounding municipalities, and we are not. We are far from it. And if you guys don't do something about it, everyone's pulling kids out. And if y'all don't do anything about it, you're just going to have this money going out there. And we've got these other fields that we're coming in. We don't even keep up with what we have out there. So let's just add more mass chaos when it's not even streamlined yet? I don't understand that. I mean, maybe it's too much common sense for, you know, all the red tape that has to be gone through. I don't know, but it's just very frustrating as a citizen. And I do respect all of you being in your seats. It is not a job I could do. That's why I've never run for it. But I just want y'all to know this will not be the last time that our commission hears from me about our rec department.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other citizen comments? Anybody who wants to meet me at Frozenberry and buy me yogurt, to complain about anything? But you have my ear. Mr. Shepherd, one last time.
Yes, I wanted to also thank everyone for showing up tonight. I come from up by the Gainesville Airport, the Lamplighter Trailer Park.
Well, we appreciate you coming that far.
It's quite a drive for me. And I run on my disability checks. I've run for city commission, I run for mayor, and 6 years of my life I've wasted. So I don't want to go through another 6 years of wasting my life. I'm putting myself out there as a county commissioner and asking people to help me to become your commissioner and help eliminate some of these problems. I'm hearing a whole boatload of things that are ringing bells in my head of how to, and the answers of how to solve them. And P.K. Young in the city of Gainesville had the same problem. Neglect. DeWalt School, the same thing. So this is not, first time meat slapped on a plate is being overcooked. This is something that's been left on the grill too long, and we need to take and address it. And I take and swear my oath and my word that I'll do my best as a public citizen to take and do that.
Thank you,
that's
sir.
what I have.
All right. We appreciate it. You made it this far, you might as well get up. Gets a little easier every time,
No, it doesn't.
especially at 10:30 at night. It's real easy then.
Christy Watford. I've spoken on the MSTU every time so far or whatever. And what Sheriff Darnell has said and what she said last year doesn't pan out with what she's doing this year. And then she sat right there, and I stood at this podium for the first time speaking in front of anybody. And so and she blamed, every time she got up to talk, she would say, well, it's because the county commission. Well, the county commission did this to me. Well, county commission, well, they shorted my budget, so I'm making you guys pay. Really? Don't think that's the way this is supposed to work. But anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you. Last call for citizen comments. Seeing none, we are adjourned. All right. Good.